Welcome back to KYTL for another exciting exit interview. Today we have Ian, who is going to tell us all about his season.
The one and only Ian Harris. Ian,
What isn't there to say?
There's almost too much to say. I mean, it's now just for the viewers and listeners at home. It's now been a couple weeks since the finale of season 6 has aired, so I'm sure we've given Ian enough time to simmer down. Is that right, Ian?
I don't know about simmer down, but yes. I'd say the intervening 4 years has given me some time to simmer down.
Okay, right.
Over the whole situation, but don't worry, I can easily uncork myself very quickly if I want to. So
incredible.
Yeah. I mean, Ian, you said you have notes here. Let's hear it. I mean, you got talking points. I don't want to step over those. Let it rip, man.
Where do we even start? You know,
why don't we start at the beginning? Because I mean, I know
at the beginning,
you and I were at least in part privy to enough of the comments and questions regarding producers being cast and everything. Would love to get your thoughts on that, but then also just going through your mentality and if it changed at all during the game, or if your thoughts on Survivor Michigan just got reaffirmed for you.
Yeah. So I mean, so I have notes on every episode and every week, so I could effectively talk about this subject for forever, it seems. Well, going into it, you know, from the get-go, it was like something we'd wanted to do for so long, me and Katie, and you always just kind of wonder, like, how would you do watching all of your friends do it for years and years and watching it, like, you know, kind of consume them. And so in some sense it was also like foreboding, like you kind of knew it was going to mess you up in some fashion, but you couldn't stop yourself from doing it. You still like had to do it. And I applied for season 4. I've told this story before, and I was supposed to be cast, and then Cooper like got me uncast because he was worried that I would target him at All Stars, so he didn't want me on season 4. But I think that it all played out how it should, because if I was on season 4, I think it would have messed up all the editing with everything, and I probably would have also applied for All Stars. So like, it's honestly better that that didn't happen. And season 6 was the season I was meant to play, for better or for worse.
Definitely.
And then going into it, me and Katie obviously knew each other and knew we were going to play. And I actually didn't really know Noah super well at all. Like, we were on production together for All Stars, but it wasn't like we were like super buddies or anything. At that time, but I was aware that he was applying and probably going to play as well. There was some talks that Sarah Gallagher's boyfriend was going to be playing, and so I kind of thought that might be something that happened, but it didn't happen. And then I found out, I can't remember how I found out, but I did find out before the game that George was going to be playing. So like, we all knew.
Yeah, it was very much, I mean, at least the 4 of us knew each other was playing.
Somehow we figured out. Did you just tell me George was playing? Is that what happened?
No, I remember, I think I tried to keep it a secret. I mean, for my own sake, obviously, but like, because I wasn't going to let you guys know that I was talking to George super closely ahead of time anyway. But I think it was Noah who was like, who ended up telling us, and then I remember I had to act surprised.
I had a really funny confessional that I filmed week 1 that didn't get put in the show, where I was talking about how I thought I was in the best position of anyone in the game, and the reason why was because I was in the best position of any of the returners, because I was like, I didn't know that Katie and George were dating, and going into it, I thought me and Katie were going to be like, you know, number ones, like Leia and Cooper, like, you know, ride or die until I'd like get rid of Katie at like 4 or 5 or something, because I obviously couldn't go together with her.
Which, for the record, Ian told me this. He was like, "Oh, we're gonna be ride or dies until I get rid of you," and I'm like, "I don't think you know the definition of ride or dies, Ian."
Yeah,
that's as ride or die as it can get with me. Like, that is like, I can't get higher than that. Like, I can't promise you final 2 or 3 unless I think you like suck at the game. That's the only way I can promise you that. So like, I can't promise you that. But what was I saying? Yeah. So I thought I was in the best position because I was like, I'm closest with Katie, and I kind of felt like I was closest with Noah also. And I was like, oh, and me and George like have this editor connection. So like, none of the 3 of us know George super well, but I'm like maybe know him the best. So I somehow thought that I was the closest with all 3 of them between each other, which ended up obviously just not being true whatsoever, because Katie and George were secretly dating, but I didn't know that at the time. So
You and Noah were definitely closer though. And I think that was just a situation of, I think you guys just generally had more in common. Like I was closer with Bailey, but you became faster friends with Noah.
yeah, that checks out. We also were put into the fire very quickly. Like Saka was such a chaos ball that like we kind of had to suddenly become allies.
Well, did you guys do any sort of like pre-gaming before, like once you found out, or was it sort of like you all kind of knew, but you just kind of stayed quiet because it was like returning players and a lot of newer
I don't
players as
remember
well?
there wasn't really any pre-gaming really. Like we talked, but it was kind of like
Yeah.
what was there to pre-game? You know what I mean? Like we kind of knew we
Yeah.
would all try to work together, and we also kind of knew, at least I didn't realize as much watching it back. Like I never trusted George ever in the game. And by proxy, once I found out that him and Katie were dating, I pretty much didn't really trust Katie for most of it until like the last week. But watching it back made me really fully realize how much more serious George and Katie were about like working with us, or at least they were like acting as if that was the case, you know? Like George,
we were serious about it.
Yeah, like there was all this talk about like this inner tribe web and all this stuff, and a lot of that stuff just to me was just like, we're not doing that. Like die, die, die. Like we must destroy Obsidian. You know.
Die. Oh my god.
I did have a funny story written down, which is that I was getting a lot out of the first day of the game, especially when I walked in. I was pretending I didn't know like anyone. Like I was pretending I didn't know any of the producers and all this shit. And I was getting a lot out of that on like a personal level. Like there's that moment where I shake hands with Katie, and like I did the same thing with like Noah and George. I remember walking in and I was being like, Matthew Israel was like directing traffic to where we were going. I was like, oh, is this for the like Survivor thing? Like, what is this? Like, I'm so confused.
Killed me.
And
I
then,
was dying laughing.
Yeah, and then I was like pretending to shake hands with everybody, and there was a moment during the challenge where it all almost went up in smoke because I went up to Chloe to ask her a question about how the challenge worked, and I was like, "Hey, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't catch your name, but like, could you re-explain this like part?" Or whatever. She's like, "What do you mean, Ian? You know me?" And she just said that.
Did anyone hear that?
No, but I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like someone could have heard it, you know. It was like pretty loud. There was just a lot of other stuff going on, so no one heard it. But I was like, what the hell are you doing, Chloe? You're like messing up all my plans to pretend I don't know anybody.
Well, and then I feel like there was a level, especially during the challenge, because we knew Brady well enough that with his commentary, it was almost difficult to try and pretend like we didn't know Brady as well. And I don't know about you, Ian, but I remember I like said something like clapped back at Brady during that first challenge, and the people like looked at me and were like, oh my gosh, like why did you say that? Like, how
Yeah, I mean, I just wouldn't have said anything like that.
No, I think you did though. I think during the challenge it was like it
Oh.
got heated enough. But
That challenge was tough. Also, the very first challenge, I remember I agreed to do the puzzle because right off the gate, that guy Jay, he said he would be the caller, and you could just tell he was going to be shit as the caller. Like everyone just kind of knew that he was. I feel like you knew he was going to be the first boot before we even lost the challenge. Genuinely, like he just had that energy, and I could just tell that whatever he agreed to do, he was not going to do a very good job of. So I was like, if I agreed to the puzzle, likely by the time it gets to us, either I'll be a hero or it'll be like, oh, I have so little time that like this other guy fucked it up so much worse, you know, which was basically the case. But fun fact, the people in my tribe had figured out what the answer was to the puzzle and were trying to like whisper it to me, and I just didn't hear them. So yeah,
brutal.
Could have changed the whole game if we had won. We had won first.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, another fun fact about that challenge, which I forgot and was kind of edited out, was that it took like Brady ended up having to give each tribe hints at what the words were because it was just so out there.
Yeah, well, he said the puzzle will explain the theme of the season. So I was kind of trapped in like a survivor mindset. I was like running through like Edge of Extinction, like whatever, like Redemption Island, or like different like different like survivor twists it could be. And I didn't like, so I was never gonna figure it out, honestly. Like I was not gonna be able to figure out that it was the Michigan difference. Oh yeah, we'll have to get into the difference maker. To get into the difference maker of it all. Oh, yeah. I have thoughts on the difference maker.
I mean, honestly, let's hear them. Unless you want to go episode by episode.
I mean, this is you guys' show. You know, how do you guys normally do it?
I do want to hear some like episode breakdown things, but like I mean the whole theme of the season was the difference maker, and it was like a very different element of like a Survivor Michigan
Yeah.
season. What were your thoughts?
Well, so the difference maker to me was a bad twist, to be blunt about it. And the reason why, and I think that they tried there. I think that as these college Survivor seasons go on, you find that the productions have an urge, a need to do more and more crazy twists and more crazy things because the producers themselves are getting bored. Like the production team for this season was mostly the original production team from like seasons 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and they had all taken a break for All Stars, most of them, and now they were all back. And I think a lot of them were just like antsy. They're like, we got, this is like Matthew Israel's like sixth Survivor season he's producing. So some of these people, they're just kind of like, let's just throw some crazy shit in there. And I like the concept of the difference maker in theory, that there's like something like the Maryland season that's airing right now is doing something similar, but I think in like a better way. And the reason why it's better is because my big issue with the difference maker is just how random, A, how you get it is, and B, how the various powers work. So like on the Maryland season that's happening right now, it's known there's always one chat. It's called like the game changer. It's like there's one hidden at each challenge, and everyone just knows that. And that's how you get it, is it's hidden at the challenge. So the first week of the difference maker in season 6, everybody on our tribe had to like decide who was going to get it. And if it had been that way every week, I think it would have been more defensible of a twist. But what bothered me so much about it is that sometimes there wasn't one. Sometimes you got it by winning the challenge. Sometimes you got it by losing the challenge. The one that drove me the craziest was at the merge challenge. There's an idol clue hidden under this pizza box, and I like attacked the pizza. I was like, I know there's gonna be an idol clue hidden at the merge. I gotta be the one to find it. So I like put all this effort into finding the idol clue, and then Grace was rewarded by getting the same idol clue for sucking at the challenge. She was the first one out of the challenge, and they're like, oh, plot twist. It wasn't like they said this before the challenge. If they had said, if you drop first, you're the difference maker, totally different. Then like that could be some kind of strategy of you choosing to drop first. But no, it wasn't until after the challenge was over that they said, oh, by the way, Grace, because you got last in the challenge, now you also get an idol clue. I was like, what the hell is this? Are you kidding me? Why should you be rewarded for sucking at the challenge?
Yeah.
And so a lot of them were just too random. And like it happened to feel like Noah and Grace always got the best ones. Like Ellie got it like 3 times, and all the ones that Ellie got were awful, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like Noah, he got the one with the card stacking tower. The difference maker he got was that not only did he get to go to the other tribe's tribal, but he also got half of an idol, which was just beyond ridiculous. Like, what are we talking about here?
Exactly. And it almost honestly, looking at kind of like the order of it, it was like it got better and better the further into the game you got, which is kind of like just becomes more OP with less people in the game.
Well, the last couple were not pretty good. Like, fun fact, we could always when we get to this episode, but George claims that he threw the final 6 challenge to get the difference maker.
Oh, that's
because
right.
what it was going to be was whoever won that challenge was allowed to, they would decide who was difference maker, and it was down to me and George, like in the whatever strength position. And I said out loud, in front of everybody, I said, George, like whoever wins, we give the other one the difference maker. That's like the deal. And George claims that he threw it because he couldn't stand me having like the difference maker, and he would rather have it himself. Well, George went home that week, so great move, George. And that difference maker that he would have gotten, it was the ability to get one extra turn in the board game challenge at Final 5, which ended up lasting like 5 hours. So not sure that one extra turn would have done it that much, and potentially threw his entire game away for one extra turn in the board game. But,
Yeah, well, I guess at that point too, they had to adjust what the difference makers were going to be because it turned virtual now.
Yeah, I have heard that Prod was put in a tricky spot because the first couple difference makers each got 2 powers, but they weren't planning for all of them to have that. But then people started like theorizing that if you came out and said, oh, I only have like 1 power, then people were like, they're obviously lying, So Prod was like, oh, we have to give everybody 2 powers now, which just made it even more overpowered.
Yeah, and I guess that's like, that was my like sort of like concern about difference maker when it first came out. And like, after being on Survivor Michigan production, you know how it is with the players like going at production being like, what is this, like, and like we just let them make up fun things because honestly we are bored and we want something interesting to happen, but the players are going to come out here and be like, but so even like, as a viewer, it was like kind of like, what is happening?
I am like a little I'm not like religiously opposed to like twists like some Survivor people are, like especially like a lot of things I'm going to say today is that the player Ian and the viewer slash editor Ian are two different people, you know? So like those are two different things entirely. Like what I'm fine with as a player versus what I'm okay with as an editor viewer are completely different. Like as an editor viewer, my view is like it's a TV show. You can pretty much do whatever you want to make good TV. My interested difference maker is that I don't even think like I think Shot in the Dark is fine. I think like a lot of the stuff they're trying in the newer seasons are fine. It's okay to you. The question for me is more, is it good TV or not? Not is it fair? As a player, my question is it fair? But as an editor, I don't even really care about that. But the difference maker isn't good TV either. A lot of them were really wordy. It took time out of the episodes, and most of the time they had so little impact that it's like we have to waste 5 to 10 minutes every episode explaining something that just doesn't matter. And that's why I think it was like also kind of bad TV.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But
Well,
yeah, I'm not a fan of the difference maker.
even though it did help your quote unquote side of the game pretty often.
No, it did not. The
You
half
guys
idol,
got all the idols.
but those things were not helping me. That half idol was causing me beyond pain and suffering at the bridge. Like that half idol was the single thing that hurt my game the most, more than anything else that was going on. Just the existence of it was just flabbergasting to me, and it was
I mean, did
everything
it
about
ever
it.
seem like anyone was ever actually intending to use it or work together to use it?
Well, when Lindsay R and Noah had it, I thought that it could be played on Taylor. And the week that we voted Taylor off, Jack really wanted to go to Lindsay R and loop her in on the plan because he didn't want to blindside her. He wanted to tell her like this is what's happening and like you probably can't stop it, but like yada yada. And I told Jack that if he did that, I was just going to vote for George and vote George off because if Jack told Lindsay R that, then Noah and Lindsay R would play the half idol on Taylor. I was certain that would happen. That's the only
Right.
person they could ever agree to play it on. So I was like, Jack, if you do that, I'm out, and I'm just gonna vote for George. I'm sorry, like I'm not doing that. That's not a plan that makes sense. And if
And you
they,
wanted Taylor out.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Even though it seemed like she had you wrapped around her finger a little bit by the end there.
she did a little bit, but not enough.
Not enough.
I think that if she had gotten to work on it even a week or two earlier, I think she would have been able to maybe keep it that way. But the problem was that she was just too centrally located in that like no one had suggested getting rid of her, like her name hadn't even been discussed until that week. I never heard someone even suggest Taylor's name. And she was in with absolutely everybody, and as much as I wanted to believe that she wanted to take me to the end and was fully with me, it's like she didn't do enough to make me fully believe she would choose me over a lot of these other people. And she says she would, but like I don't really know if she would have. So I don't know if it's like, yeah. Although Taylor has laid out for me a bunch of times that she thinks that if I had saved her, I would have won the game. But it's kind of but it's based on the idea that like I'm still winning most of the rest of these challenges. So I'm like, but I don't know that in the moment that I'm gonna win like the next couple challenges.
Right. Well, and then you got to think that keeps Taylor in the game. So who's going to stop her from getting to the end?
Oh, but well, this is why her whole argument is like, though, but I would never let Taylor get to the end, right? So like the way that Grace's social game was described at Final Tribal is how I felt Taylor's social game actually was. Like I would never have let Taylor get to the end. I thought she would have definitely beaten. Her or Noah were the biggest threats in the game. That was like pretty clear. Right. So yeah. But,
well, there are so many scenarios that we could go into about what could have cost
Survivor,
you the game.
What if is a rabbit hole no one should ever go down.
Especially if you lose at the end, because for a lot of people, it's like Noah's just like, if Noah plays his idol, that's it. He just has to play his idol. He probably wins. For me, it's like every little thing. Could I have done this? Should I have done that? You could re-question almost every single moment of the entire game.
Well, if we want, we can go through episode by episode now. So we've already talked about episode 1, and I figure pre-merge has been discussed a good amount at this point. So Ian, maybe pre-merge, if you want to touch on anything. You were on the right side of all, if not most, of votes, right? Throughout
Yeah.
the whole game, and
The
definitely pre-merge, you were on the right side of every vote.
the only vote the entire game that didn't go the way I expected it to was Luke getting voted out.
Okay. But
But
you weren't even
I
at that tribal.
no, I wasn't. But
Right.
Luke and Noah, I should have known when when Luke was so confident, because Luke really didn't know what was going on. He was like, "Bro, don't worry, man. Like, it's all over the celebration. Like, I got T-Rex in my pocket. Like, it's a done deal. We're voting off Jack. It's over." And Noah was very confident as well. And so I should have known when Luke was confident that like it was something was not going to go right. But I also wanted to stay out of it because I wanted Jack to go home. I wanted to weaken George and Katie, but I didn't want any culpability for it. And I kind of thought it was perfect. Like, oh, Noah's gonna have to vote off Jack, and I'm gonna be able to sit there and be like, oh, I had no idea that's what they were gonna do. Like, oh, I would never have wanted Jack to go home. You know,
Which, like, I'm gonna be so honest with you, that would not have been believable for a second. But
you'd think, but here's a funny story I wrote down. This is like sort of low key cheating that I participated in the pre-merge, which is that. So do you guys remember that Ellie had this like love letter advantage that she gave it to Abby, and
yes.
if they both made it to some distance in the game, they get an idol together. Obviously, Abby goes home second, so it's all kind of a moot point. But a couple weeks into the game, a couple weeks after Abby had been voted off, most of Survivor Michigan was at Matthew Israel's house for the Winners at War premiere watch party. And I noticed that there was some like Survivor looking paper. Like they use this very distinctive paper for all of the like idol clues and advantages and stuff. And I noticed some of this paper just kind of sitting around Matthew Israel's house. I saw from like the side of my eye that it looked like it was something, you know? And so I kind of like in a moment where no one's really looking, I pocketed it and I was like, I'll just see what this is later. Like,
not
but I
you
get
stealing it. Oh my
well,
god.
I think my view on it was kind of like, don't hate the player, hate the game. Like, why is Matthew Israel leaving this stuff lying around his house? I was hoping it was going to be like an idol clue or something useful. But then I opened it up and it was just like this love letter from Ellie explaining that, like, oh, Abby has this advantage, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, well, this is worthless since Abby was out of the game like a month ago. But I remember I showed it to Cooper. Cooper was like, as we were walking home from Matthews, I opened up. Cooper's like, "What is that? What is this?" He's like, "I don't want to see this. This is not okay. This is I don't want to know about this." He's like, "If you do anything else like this, don't tell me. Like, I really don't want to engage this." And I was like, "It's not cheating, Cooper. Like, it was just sitting there. Like, I had no idea what it was." He's like, "You knew it was something."
That's why you grabbed it. You knew it was something.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
well,
great.
yeah, I guess luckily it wasn't anything.
But luckily it didn't matter at all. So
Yeah.
All right, let me see episode 2. Ian notes episode 2. Da, da, da. Oh. I
Do you regret voting out Abby and Stephanie?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like in the moment there was no choice but to get rid of them. But later on in the game I really regretted it because Abby and Stephanie and Luke were before we get into this any farther, anyone who watches this, anything I say about any of the people in season 6, I mean strictly in the game sense, you know, of what I think of them as game players, how I think about how they voted and made moves in season 6. I think all these people are very wonderful people in real life, you know, and I have no issues with any of them in the real world outside of Survivor Michigan season 6, a very specific subset of time and game. But Abby, Stephanie, and Luke were actually, unfortunately, 3 of the better players on season 6. And they just played too hard, too fast, and it hurt them. But it would have been much preferable to have them at the merge than what I would call a horde of essentially zombie bots who were just basically NPCs. I mean, this season was the worst played season of Survivor Michigan, of seasons 1 through 6. I can't speak to the future seasons, but at merge you had a point of it where almost every person in the game was acting against their own interest. It was anti-Survivor. It was really really difficult to play, and a lot of the time you were spending it just wondering why are people doing these things. And eventually in the moment of the game I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why people were doing things. And the problem is that only afterwards did I fully realize that there weren't any answers that would satisfy me. The reasons why they were doing them were not reasons that I would have ever come to because they made absolutely no sense most of the time. So And it would have been good to have Abby, Stephanie, and Luke around, who were at least like, they're probably gunning for me. Like if they're still in the game, me and Noah probably go home much earlier. But it's a more interesting game, I think. I think that they, or at least they wanted to play the game. They really wanted to play, and I appreciate that over a legion of people who barely understood that they were even in the game, didn't even know what was going on, which was the vast majority of the cast. I think that Abby and Stephanie were just on the wrong season. If they had been cast in like literally any other season without me or Noah there to like sense them and just stuff them out, they should have been running. They would have run that entire tribe. They would have been in a great spot. If they had just stayed calm and done nothing, we vote off Emily Grimm, we vote off Lindsay Adams, and then at a swap, they want to get rid of us. Easy. They can flip to you guys. I mean, if Abby and Stephanie had gotten in with you and Taylor and Lindsay,
I mean, I was gonna say if there was even just a different combo of tribes, I feel like I remember day one before we got split up into tribes, Abby and I were getting along very well. And I've talked to Stephanie after she got voted out, after I got voted out, I talked to Stephanie and she was cool. And I was like, well, dang, like, why didn't we get together?
So I respected them a lot. And I think they would have been really good to have on the season longer, just also from an entertainment value.
Yeah.
But the thing is that like they did just play that week 2 really poorly. Like they should have just let Emily go home. Everybody was going to vote for Emily. I mean, Emily said to us week 1, we all had tribe dinner right after, like, I think we had tribe dinner early in the week. And she was like, all right, I'll see you guys at tribal. And like everyone took that seriously. Like it was clear she did not think any of us would talk between like the tribe dinner and the tribal like 5 days later. Like that's kind of where we knew she was at. So like Emily would have really just gone home second, probably unanimously, if Abby and Stephanie hadn't just like needed to make a move. They were just such super fans. They like had to make a move, but they just didn't need to. They were just fine, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff with that always confused me. Like it turns out Luke never told them that that we had a 5-person alliance, which is insane to me because he was like clearly more with them. So like, why did he tell them that? If he had told them that, they maybe would have been like, oh, like I've talked to Abby about this after the game. Like she was like, yeah, if I had known that there was this 5-person alliance, I would have been a little more reticent to like be trying to turn you and Noah against each other, since it would have been obvious at the least that you guys were in an alliance together. So Luke, a bit of a loose cannon wild card. But yeah, that was a funny week for sure. There was honestly a lot more complications to that vote, but I feel like there's just more important things to discuss at this point.
I do want to ask in terms, so the challenge where the tennis ball challenge where you ended up picking up the Obsidian idol clue.
Oh yeah.
But then B, that I feel like that challenge also started the like Obsidian versus Saka like massive hate towards each other because of Luke and Thejus's performance.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinions or thoughts on any of that?
I mean, I think that Luke and Thejus, they were being kind of broy during that challenge. And I remember that it kind of painted this whole target of Saka as like this broy group of people, which was just kind of funny to me because like really like that's like not really what me and Noah are like really, but and certainly not Lindsay Adams or some of these other people. But yeah, they were being super broy. But my view of it also was that like the Obsidian people, like God, they were annoying. Like oh my God, like there's something so infuriating about people not going to tribal, not having to play the game, and then be there. Oh, how could you be playing the game? Oh my God, I cannot believe them. They're so mean. They actually are voting people off. Can you believe that? It's outrageous. We just want to have more pool. Like Obsidian's over there, like sipping their champagne, having pool parties at Justin's, and like fucking, just getting drunk and vibing. And we were like in the gauntlet of having to go to tribal every week. And it's just like, there was something so people talk about like, it's hilarious to me that like, I always knew Saka was going to be portrayed as the villains, but the funniest thing to me about watching the season was that they were also portrayed as the majority, which is hysterical because they were not at all. Like Saka, we were in the minority the entire game, and Obsidian acted as if they were in the minority. They let us have all the power. They let us do whatever we wanted. They at no point did they understand that what they should be doing is just wiping us off the map, basically. And it was because I think just like from the get-go, they just weren't playing Survivor. Like they just didn't understand what was going on. So there was something infuriating about it also once we were in the part of the swap where it was like, they're trying to court Justin, right? Like Noah and Grace, they're trying to get Justin onto our side. I was trying to convince Ellie on Kopaka for weeks to like work with me and like get rid of one of the other girls because I was like, Ellie, you're on the bottom of their tribe. Because they like were considering voting you off and didn't even loop you into the plan when Anne went home. And all of those people, both those people, Ellie, all three of the people who were kind of in the middle the most, Ellie, Justin, and Emily, all three of them chose Obsidian over Saka. And Obsidian already had the numbers, but they were just given even more numbers. At each moment, like Ellie did vote off Katie, but then Ellie went immediately back to Obsidian after that. It was still with Obsidian in the merge. Justin was, stayed strong all the way, was going to go to Rocks for his girl. Like he was Obsidian all the way. And Emily also flipped vote off Luke and is with Obsidian the rest of the game. And fun fact, all three of those people would have been in a better position if they had stuck with Saka, because the Obsidian people, for all of their friendliness and all their niceness, they really only cared if you were in their little quesadilla clique. If you were not in that clique, they did not give a fuck about you, and they would turn you in a second and just get rid of you. They would just, like, at the merge, they're just like, oh, Justin, bye. Emily, bye. Our own numbers, bye. Like, oh, you've been loyal to us. Like, why they all want Justin out? I can't. We're getting ahead of ourselves, though. There's so much after we get to that. But like,
no, that was so good though.
It was just annoying because it was like they're treating us like these assholes, like this villainous characters, and it's like, we were actually willing to treat these people with more respect, though. Like it's one thing to sit there and be like, oh, we're friendly, come on, Ellie, work with us, but then just like they never wanted to take her far in the game. They just wanted to vote Ellie. They didn't care about any of those people. They only cared about their little clique, love triangle, whatever the hell was going on over there. At least that was my view.
Love triangle. Yeah, I mean, obviously I have my own thoughts, but this is
the
exit interview.
T-Rex tennis ball.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because at that point, this is only week 3.
Yeah.
So this is one aspect that I don't think that the producers had that much of an advantage going into the game in terms of like really knowing each other necessarily, because we didn't. Well, maybe we did, maybe we didn't. The truth is that like everyone else in the game just should have cared a lot more about it. Like as soon as they found out about it, they just should have wanted us out much more than they did. But where we did have a major advantage was in understanding how the game worked. So like the first couple idle clues, we knew that like, oh, the third or fourth clue is going to basically just tell you where it is, and this is kind of bad on production also. Like they should probably have changed up the way their clues worked more, knowing that there was people on the cast who like had been making them themselves. But they didn't. So it was always known that, by me at least, I was like, yeah, the first couple clues are going to be like worthless, basically. Like, oh, it's in a tree, it's in a bush. And then the third one is just going to straight up tell you where it is. So going into that challenge, I was like hyper eagle. Like this is the third clue. This is when they're going to start like actually telling us stuff, versus the rest of the cast. Like I remember Luke and Abby spending hours and hours trying to like decipher the first clue. And I knew that like this is kind of pointless. Like there's not going to be any real secret code in there. And I think it would have been good on production to like have there be, or have it like, change up the way it worked a bit. So I was looking out for those clues. I still don't know how T-Rex didn't get it. He just picked up a tennis ball. It had the clue attached to it, very obviously. And I just watched T-Rex walk all the way back and put the tennis ball in the bin and not pick. I was like, there was definitely a clue in the tennis ball. And so I just reached down like between rounds into the bin, took it, stuffed it in my pocket. Nobody ever noticed.
I'm so annoyed about that, like to this day. Like that is just wild. So was it the ball that was like all the way down at the end of the field?
I have no idea where he.
No, it was. I'm pretty sure it was like one. I
think it was the closest one, actually. Yeah, because I think that's where Noah got his. I think it was the closest ball to, whatever. But I remember that night. This is a funny story actually about that idol that wasn't in the show, because George, editing tricks, he didn't show that I found it till like a couple weeks later in the show. But in real life, I went that night to try to find it, and it was in this pot. And the issue was they had put it in the pot at the beginning of the season when I guess it had been a little warmer, because the pot was it was like a foot down to this dirty dirt pot on campus, and you couldn't get it, basically. Like it was rock solid. So I went there that night trying to get it, and Matthew Israel actually went to film me. That's how I knew I was in the right spot as well. Matthew Israel, the king of just telling you where the idols are.
Yeah.
So like
the minute he comes to film you, you're hot on the trail.
Yeah. So I'm like trying to get at this. I'm like, dude, this is impossible. And at one point he's like, why don't you try that spot? So then I was like, all right, I'll try that spot. That spot was also rock hard. I was like, bro, what is this? So for a couple of days, I was bitching to production, like, hey, you should just give me an idol. Like, obviously, this is where it is. Obviously, you didn't plan for it to be impossible to find. Like, you physically can't guess. So I end up going home to my parents' place, a couple nights later, getting a spade, like a metal spade. And I went back there. I was actually out with Cooper and Bailey at Skeeps on like a Tuesday night. It was whatever, Tequila Tuesday or whatever. And so it's like 3 a.m. coming home and I'm like hammered and I'm like, all right, it's time to go get my idol. And so I took the metal spade, go over there, and it was another 3 or 4 hours of me. I was drunk. I was listening to Harry Potter podcast and I was just chipping away for like 4 hours. And I was like, if I don't find it tonight, and I was like, there was cops driving by and I'd be like, dude, like if someone drives by and sees me like digging into, they're gonna be like, what is going on with this guy? So eventually I found it though. And originally this would have also changed things, Katie. I was planning to put a fake idol there. And I had a fake idol all ready to go and stuff. But the only reason I didn't is because I wasn't sure the spade would work and it was fucking freezing. And so I was drunk and I forgot to bring my fake idol with me. And I was like, all right, whatever, I'll go back and put it in. But it was so cold, I just never bothered to. So
that would have changed a lot for sure.
Yeah. So that would have been crazy because you guys would have found that fake idol and you would have thought it was definitely real. There's no way you would have thought it was fake.
You think?
Yeah. It would have come with all the paper and it would have come with everything and it would have been in that spot. Like, okay. I feel like you guys would not have thought it was fake.
Well, actually, what could have happened is Mason could have found it.
Did he have the clue?
He looked in that spot the week that he was going home.
Interesting.
So
interesting.
You know,
what could have been?
Yeah, all the
hypotheticals. What could have been the story of Survivor Michigan people talking after their season
for years after it happened.
Yeah. It has been for years.
Ends.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it has ended for me now.
That's good.
We'll see.
Now that we've been in the real world for a little bit.
But so yeah, that was the idol clue. I don't think I had much else about this period of time.
Yeah, because then episode 4 was.
I was kind of let down in the show that it didn't give a sense of like me and Abby's relationship really as much. Mm-hmm. Like at that tribal council where Abby goes home, I said, tell Megan I said hi. And I think that kind of went over a lot of people's heads of like what that was about, which is that like Abby's sister was named Megan in no relation to other Survivor Michigan Megans. But we lived together sophomore year and had beef basically and like just didn't like each other very much. And so then when we started the show and I found out that Abby was Megan's sister, I was always like, oh my God, she's going to like target me just because of that. And we had this kind of like, you know, and we like said to each other, like, hey, like we know that like that I have beef with your sister, but like we got to work together anyways, blah, blah, blah. And then the day of tribal, I spent the last 3 or 4 hours before tribal hanging out with Abby and Stephanie and Luke and like playing up that I was totally with them and going to like stick with them and vote off Noah. And Abby had said to me, and it's on camera, Abby said to me, or I said to her, like, oh, by the way, like tell Megan I said hi. Like, I'd love to like get coffee with her sometime or like, you know, catch up with the old roommates, yada, yada. So then at tribal, I said that again, but in a much more mean tone. Like the tone was much more of a fuck you of a like, oh, like, yeah, for real. Tell Megan I said hi, bro. Like, so actually, I think it was that comment plus the Thages and Luke broing that was within like a 10-minute period of time. Like we went from that tribal to that challenge, and I feel like that just fully encapsulates the Saka like douchebaggery of it all.
Yes, so, I mean 100%. I feel like that was.
I mean, I regretted saying that. I was like, oh, it was something I was joking about saying, and then at tribal, I just look up and it's like Sam Morris and like Nick and like Bree and like all these people, Crouch and all my buddies, and I just had this like it's like Survivor for me was a little bit like when I was in like elementary school, you know, like I was kind of sometimes like the troublemaker and act up, and you get attention from the other kids because the other kids think it's cool, you know, but like the teachers and parents get annoyed with you, and eventually you like grow out of that. But Survivor was almost a little bit like it again because I knew that all of my friends on production were really expecting me to kind of be a little bit of a crazy person on the show, and I kind of wanted to like give that to them, you know, or like play into it for sure. So yeah,
I don't think you should regret saying that. I think that's where part of the editor Ian comes out, because you knew you wanted to give moments of good TV.
I thought I was not going to be long for this game, like from the get-go. Like from the get-go, I thought like, because this is a little bit going into the like me losing it of it all, but it's like to some degree you can only play like as you are, you know?
Yeah.
And especially in a season like this where Katie, Noah, and George already know me ahead of time, there's no world where I can ever, if I don't play super hard, they will tell everybody I am regardless.
Yeah.
And like if I don't like start like, you know, being a scheme ball, they will tell people I am anyways. So I almost have no choice but to just go insanely hard, even harder than they think I would, because they're going to be telling everybody not to trust me and shit no matter what. So like I don't have a choice. I can never be I can never be the social pariah or whatever. That's not the right use of that word. I can never be like the one that everybody likes, like the social game wizard. That's not possible for me, because I'm gonna have at the minimum Noah and George telling everybody the whole time, you can't trust him, he'll do anything to win. Da, da, da. So it's like, what choice do I have? I have no choice but to play this way.
Yep. Honestly, glad you did, because it did absolutely make
So entertaining.
Yeah.
He's like, what's gonna happen this week on the Ian Harris show?
Basically, I mean, at this point, Ian, and I know we're trying to go episode by episode, but like any one-liners, any zingers that you said but didn't get put in.
Oh, so many. I have so many. So many. Some of my favorite ones were oh my God, there were so many good ones. There were so many. And I had a whole analogy comparing Luke to Luke Skywalker. And I was saying that him trying to make this blind side with Abby and Stephanie week 2 was like Luke leaving Dagobah to go like save his friends in Empire Strikes Back. I was like, he wasn't ready yet. He wasn't fully trained, you know, like, and then it got like more elaborate. And I was like, but we have to like make sure, because Noah was being really mean to Luke after that happened. And I was saying that was really stupid. We need to bring Luke back to our side. I was like, if you're too much of a dick to him, he'll go over to the dark side and team up with Darth Vader and the Emperor, Katie and George. I was like, so we need him on our side against like there's not that many Jedi left. Like we need him on our side against, you know, the evil empire of Obsidian.
Oh my God.
I also called Jack. I said some pretty nasty stuff about Jack at one point. At one point during the merge, I was just really confused by Jack. And I said that he reminded me of like one of those fish from SpongeBob that's in every episode, but you don't know their name. Just like one of the ones in the background, you know? I was like, yeah, he's in every
leg.
Yes.
Exactly. It's like he's in every episode, but he has no characterization. You don't know much about him. I say he was jock adjacent. I was like, he's a jock adjacent guy from high school. So like there's the jocks and then there's the jacks. And they seem like they're sort of in with the jocks, but like, are they? And like, you don't really know anything about them. They're not really like, there's no stories about them. There's no like, they're jock adjacent. That's yeah. I had a lot of pretty wild
You definitely
ones.
had some good ones, and unfortunately,
oh yeah, I said some stuff about George too in the merge that was not included.
I wonder why George, the editor, didn't include things.
I'll say no. I think George, he like really gave me almost too kind of an edit. Like I said so much meaner stuff than was what was put on the show. Like most of my meanest lines were mostly cut out, I think. Because I said, Lindsay R and Grace, when they were playing poker, the poker challenge they had to do, I like made a lot of fun of that. I said that like, I said they were basically playing stupid because Lindsay R was like folding before Grace had even bet, like, and like vice versa. Like they very clearly did not understand like how it worked. And at one point, one of them was up by a ton and the other one needed to be betting, but was just folding. I was like, what are we doing here? And I was like, at some point in my life, I would play poker with Grace and Lindsay R every single day because, you know, everybody could use a few more change in their pockets. Like, you know,
yeah, I feel like it is. So, and Sophia, if there are other questions that you have, I feel like I'm asking a lot, even though I technically know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously know more, but not really. I mean, I feel like Ian, you were one of the people in the game that, besides for the Obsidian idol, I knew kind of where your alliances lay, and your confessionals were always very informative. Like some people would just like talk and like I would be like, what are you guys saying? Like this makes no sense.
That's how I felt in the game talking to these people.
And just a fun Side comment is I watched some of these episodes on like double time speed, and watching your confessionals in 2 times speed was 8 times more entertaining.
That sounds
Because
like a trip.
if you thought Ian talked fast in regular time, just wait till he's like da 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 da, and this blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like,
That
I was
Do
sounds
like,
you even
uh,
understand what he says?
I mean, I really had to sit there and pay attention sometimes because like other people, they finally talked at like a normal speed for me, and but like Ian, I had to like, whoa, I gotta slow down, listen what I'm
yeah.
listening to.
That was yeah. I was going 100 miles a minute the entire game from day 1 to day whatever 100. I did not stop for a second, and I just went faster and faster and more insane. I liked how because of the pandemic, I was like growing a pandemic beard, like not doing a good job of taking care of myself because like wasn't going outside. So during the merge part, you can kind of see like I start to look like how people do on a real Survivor. Like I look more disheveled. My beard's getting longer. I'm looking like just more. It looks like I haven't showered in days.
You genuinely looked like you embodied the state of your mind. You were going crazy.
I believe season 6 was a science experiment designed to drive me insane. Perfectly designed to drive me insane.
Your own individual circle of hell.
It was, yeah. It was. It
Led
truly
by
was.
Matthew Israel.
I can't overstate that enough that it was literally playing this game, especially the merge portion, was so infuriating at almost every single turn. And then when it finally became normal again, and now I just had this alliance with Grace and Lindsay Adams, we could just steamroll our way to the end. That I lose 10-0 to the 2 people that every person in the game wanted to go to the end with. I was like, what are we doing here? So
Yeah. No, but I want to hear more about the merge. I mean, obviously, you guys had to go online for COVID and stuff. Like,
we
what
should
was
talk
that
about the
like?
Katie vote first, I think.
Oh yeah,
real
Katie
quickly.
vote. Like, I've talked to Katie enough about her vote.
Everyone knows my opinion of the vote, but I will say, Ian, I know after our conversations, you really cite that vote as like a turning point for your game, or at least you thought it would be. Do you regret voting me out?
Yeah, I do. Because if Katie had been on the jury, I think I would have won the game. So
I stand by that. Absolutely.
I do regret voting Katie off. It was a tough jury for me. The thing that I found out after the game that I didn't, one thing that's important to understand is when I played season 6, I was not like the Ian who had edited 4 seasons of Survivor Michigan and watched tons and tons of Survivor. I had actually never seen a single episode of CBS when we started playing season 6. The only Survivor I had seen at that point was Michigan season 1, Michigan season 2, which I had edited, and Maryland All Stars. Those were the only seasons I had watched. And my full even though I had like produced All Stars and stuff, I hadn't really paid close attention to seasons 3 and 4 when they were going on. And like I didn't have a full understanding of like really not how like the actual like game moves works. That part I understood. The part I didn't fully understand was really how the ending works and like why people win a lot of the time. Like my impression of season 2 from like Cooper and Mitch, who I mostly talked to about it, was that it was like it was a fluke, it was a fraud, and like Nick should have won season 2, and he was like totally robbed, you know. And that's really neither here nor there. But I didn't really understand in season 6 going into it that that's not really a fluke. Like that happens a lot, or that kind of player wins a lot. And the biggest thing that you need to have in the jury is at least you have to have somebody advocating your game before Final Tribal, long before Final Tribal, because by Final Tribal it's way too late. Final Tribal is basically a farce for the TV show. Like most of the time, most people's minds are made up long before that, and I didn't really understand that in season 6. And so Katie, the problem is Katie going home. Katie was really the last person who understood most of what I was doing in the game. So after Katie went home, there was never again somebody who fully knew what I was doing and why. And I kind of thought that person was George, but it really wasn't.
Or Noah even?
At the time, I thought it was both of them. But like watching it back, it's very obvious that Noah and I were like not just not on the same page, but like we weren't really seeing things the same way. Like Noah thought I was out to get him like all these weeks when I just wasn't. I thought I was trying to still work with them, you know? Like Noah went home because he wanted me out, and I was like, I want to go to Final Four with Saka. That's like what I wanted to do. So we weren't on the same page. George, I thought, did, but we can get into George later. But But yeah, Katie, though, that week we got in the same, basically me, Grace, and that from my point of view, Noah wanted to vote off Katie because we needed numbers. We needed to get rid of one of those people. And Justin had told us the only person he would do was Katie. He didn't want to vote off Lindsay. He didn't want to vote off Taylor. And they were very loyal to Justin. Saka was. They were like, Justin's with us now. We have to trust Justin, blah, blah, blah. I hadn't been talking with Justin because I wasn't on their tribe. So I didn't care so much about that, but that's what they were saying. And they really wanted to vote off Katie. And I was like, okay. And so I kind of went along with it, but I didn't really like it. I didn't like it because it just felt bad to me. I didn't like the idea of voting off somebody who I knew didn't really want me out of the game, basically. Because that's like anti-survivor to me. It doesn't make sense. And on top of that, I thought it was going to be Saka Obsidian, and I didn't want to like be throwing away my only connection to Obsidian because I was feeling like we're just fucked. Like they were trying to get these numbers, and I was kind of the whole time like, we don't have the numbers. Even if we do get rid of numbers from Obsidian, we still don't really have the numbers going forward. Like I just almost want to just give up on Saka and be trying to like do my own thing at this point and get in, because I've been spending a lot of time trying to get in with Katie, Lindsay, and Taylor, Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of like, I don't know, like I just don't know about this. And I was going along with it because I just didn't know what to do. And we get to the day of tribal, and Grace and Noah have this big meeting with me. I call this the meeting of destiny because to me this was the most important meeting in the entire game from my perspective on the game going forward. Like it changed everything for me. In this meeting, firstly, they come into it, and right from the get-go, they're like, so the Obsidians are voting for you, Ian. And I was like, why would they do that? Because that would just be a tie. There's no way their plan is for it to just be a tie. It doesn't make any sense. And they're like, oh, Justin told us what they're doing. I was like, what? Why would he do that? I was like, the only way that Katie and them are voting for me is if they think I might be voting for them. I otherwise just don't think Katie would vote me off. So Justin clearly told them about our plan. And Grace and Noah are like, no, Justin would never do that. Why would Justin do that? I was like, obviously because he's with them. Like, what are you talking about? It was so obvious to me that Justin was with them, that he had just been lying to them about everything. And they wouldn't see that. And Grace especially just like trusted Justin so much and just like wasn't willing to accept that he clearly was not with us at all. And they were like, well, we have to do this, Ian, because then Justin will vote with us. I was like, he's not with us now. Like, what do you mean? They were like, I was like, Justin wants to vote me off. They're like, no, he doesn't. He wants to vote off Katie. I was like, what are you talking about? He obviously does want to. He's clearly with these people. And I was like, I need to go to Katie to figure out what's going on. Because I was like, there's no way their plan is for it to be a 5-5 tie. That's insane. And they were like, I think you're just they said you're overestimating these people. I was like, or underestimating them. Like there's no way they're going to go to a tie. There's no way Katie and Lindsay and Taylor want to do that. That just seems insane. I know something else is going on. And I was like, I have to go talk to Katie about it because I knew that I knew I could get Katie to tell me, or we could get on the same page, or I could figure out what was going on, But it's like me and Noah and Grace have different agendas. For them, I guess me going to Katie doesn't do anything. Even though it does, obviously, we still needed to know what was happening. We need to know if we could trust Justin or not. If we can't, then this plan doesn't matter because we can't trust him. And I had to tell them my idol because they were like, Katie, like, what if they just have an idol? If you tell Katie we know about this, they'll just play an idol on Katie. And it was going back and forth. And I was just like, I was like, all right, I have the fucking idol. So I know they don't have an idol. So there's no risk of me going to Katie because I can say whatever the fuck I want. They're not going to play an idol. We have 5 votes no matter what. We're chilling. So I go to Katie, and my plan was to say to Katie, I know something's going on. Like, I know you're lying to me. And I figured that she would admit first their whole plan to vote me off before she admitted that she knew about that I knew about her and George.
Because you and Noah knew about George and I for weeks at this point.
Yeah. I was like, so she's going to want to give me anything that isn't the deepest, darkest secret. And that's why she'll tell me their whole actual plan. So I was right. That is what happened. But as Katie explains their whole plan, I'm starting to feel more and more guilty because I'm like, oh my God, wait a second. Katie was explaining their plan. She's like, we weren't going to actually vote you off. If it tied, then if it was tied, then we'd go to rocks. But, weren't you saying that?
The whole plan was we thought you guys, we were calling your bluff on voting Ellie, and we were going to tie it to see if you guys were actually going to vote Ellie. And if you were, we would flip on the revote. If not, then we would go to,
Right. So if it tied on me and Ellie, then they would flip and vote for Ellie on the revote. But if it tied on me and Katie, then they'd go to rocks.
Yeah,
presumably, right? So I realized that they weren't planning to vote me off and all this stuff, and I understand what's happening. And suddenly, though, I felt me and Katie were going on spring break like 2 days after this as well, and Leia had been like, if you get rid of if you like ruin our spring break, I'm gonna like kill you, Ian, And I didn't really want to go on spring break with Katie, having just voted her off. And on top of that, I was realizing in that moment that like I've just come off this meeting with Noah and Grace, ostensibly my two closest allies, where they didn't listen to anything I was saying, and they didn't understand that, like, they couldn't see what I needed them to see, and they couldn't see what I was saying and how it made sense. And that really bothered me, because I was like, how am I really meant to work with them super tight going forward if we can't, like, if they're not being rational, if they just want to trust Justin for no reason and just roll the dice. And in that conversation with Katie, I'm realizing like we're talking this all out, and I'm realizing like, okay, this is what I should have been doing the whole time, because I actually like have a much better working relationship with Katie. Like we are like able to level with each other better than I was able to with these people right before this. So I'm now thinking like I kind of want to go forward with Katie in this game, and like this is the most honest I've been with anybody the entire game. But I'm about to vote her off. So then I basically had to tell her about her and about George and them, because I just couldn't, like, the levels of lies were too much. I like couldn't keep it all. There was so much lying. I was gonna have to lie to Noah and Grace about what had happened in this meeting, and then I was gonna have to lie to Katie at what our, like, I was gonna have to be like so many lies. I was like, I just need to tell somebody the truth. I can't take it anymore. So I then came clean basically and like sort of told her everything. And leaving there, when I left there, I fully was planning like, okay, either I could maybe, I was trying to maybe I can convince these guys to all vote Justin. Because at that point I was like, Justin went to both sides, just get rid of him. Like, why does anybody trust him? Or we go to Rocks for Katie, I guess. And then me and Katie would be immune. A very clever plan. We'd both be safe. And then let the dice fall where they may. What do I care? One of the sheep can go home. Who cares?
One of the sheep.
You did your job too well.
Didn't turn out that way. Yeah.
It saved your butt though.
It did, yeah. Well, because I mean, we went to Ellie right before Tribal and like kind of like pitched her to vote Katie, but Justin had been so against it. Like Justin was like, I will not. No. So I kind of thought Ellie would do the same thing, because I had been pitching Ellie for weeks to turn on the girls, and she had refused to do it ever, or they refused to do it at any point. So I didn't think Ellie was going to agree to it. And then Ellie went right back to Obsidian afterwards. It's kind of out of character for Ellie in the game that they did this, actually. This is the only time in the game they don't just go Obsidian. But I think they just wanted to save their own ass. They didn't want to go to Rocks.
Yeah, which is honestly fair, but
yeah.
But like,
sent home a star.
But it was tough because only Katie really knew how deep down the rabbit hole I was that week. Like, I was the only person in the game who actually fully knew everything that was going on, Katie and I. And so by the end of it, like coming out of it, no matter what happened, if it went to Rocks, if Katie went home, if somebody from Saka went home, I was going to be in good with everybody. The Obsidian girls thought that I had been trying to save Katie, because I kind of had been. The Saka people thought I was trying to get Katie out, because I kind of had been. And I was kind of going to be good no matter what happened, which I thought was incredible. I thought that was the best week of my Survivor game for sure. But nobody knew about it ever, because the only person who knew about it wasn't on the jury. And no one else ever really knew about it, because afterwards I did not like come clean to Saka and tell them that I was like in with Katie and Obsidian and stuff, Like, I was telling both sides what they wanted to hear, and they never really, even like on the jury, it never really all connected for people. They never really understood how well I played that week, to the point that at Final Tribal, Grace was somehow saying she deserved the thing Grace said at Final Tribal I thought was the pissed me off the most, because they were saying that she deserved more credit for the Katie vote. Because if we had listened to Grace at the Katie vote, we would have just gone to a fucking tie, having no idea what's going on at all. We would have just gone to a tie and just gone to Rocks. That's what would have happened. I was like, we just hope that Justin's with us. Well, I'm sure Justin will be with us. So I was like, what are you talking about? You didn't do anything that week except for, I mean, Justin told her the plan, but then she didn't want to do anything. She just wanted to sit there and hope that it goes our way. So I thought that was insane, but maybe from her point of view, it made sense.
Well, and then spring break happened, and I remember you telling me that you felt like the game just reset. You were in such a good position, and then it just kind of reset, because then merge.
The combination, I was in a really, really good spot. But the combination of merge, of spring break, everybody took like a week and a half off from the game.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic, which started right after we got back, plus the half idle. Those three things ruined my position completely. because the half idol ends up bringing Noah close with Lindsay and Taylor, which before that he wasn't really, at least Lindsay. And everyone just kind of retreated back to their sides, versus if we had gone, at least if we had just kept playing from then, I think I would have been able to really solidify an alliance with Lindsay and Taylor and George. It also didn't help me that people, in my view, just stopped behaving rationally at the merge. Like, I fully thought it was going to be Saka versus Obsidian. I fully thought George was going to want revenge for us voting off his girlfriend. But no, George turns around. George, all he needed to do is just get all those Obsidian people together. Revenge for Katie. We're getting revenge for Katie. They all would have gone along with that easily and just boom, 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 get rid of like Noah at the least, and then maybe more of Saka, including me, whatever. Nope, that's not what they did. He like wants to work with Noah for some godforsaken reason. He like they want to vote off Justin, who just was going to go to Rocks for them. Justin was going to go to Rocks for them, and then the next week they're like, "Yeah, we're fine if he goes." I was like, "What is going on here?" So, yeah, but I was in a good spot briefly for that. For like a 1 week stretch, I was in an amazing spot with all those people. Then it all went to shit.
Yeah, and then at least based on the edit, it felt like you were fighting for your life every single week.
Oh yeah, I was.
and still somehow ended up on the right side of the vote, always knowing what was going on.
Yeah, well, because that's what I think was so funny about it. It was like I was not trusted by anybody, but I always knew the plan. I always knew what was going on. There wasn't that much I didn't know about, really. And I always was on the right side of the votes. So how not trusted was I really? That was like kind of my view. Like, people trusted me enough to use me in their plans each week, even though I was not always I was flipping all over the place. I was the only person in the game that like genuinely tried to work with every person in the game. Like, I genuinely believe that. Or I'd say George maybe tried, but not as well.
So then, sorry, go ahead, Sophia.
No, I was just like thinking out loud, sort of trying to like break that like tribal like lines, because I felt like a lot of, and we've sort of touched on this, but how was, I guess it just didn't trust make you. My words aren't making sense today. It's early. But okay, what I'm trying to say is, you tried to break those tribal lines early. What was sort of like the motivation behind that?
I didn't think that Saka was a winning bet. I thought we were down so many numbers, and those girls, once I was on Kopaka, like Noah and Grace had a different viewpoint because they were in this majority tribe of New Saka, and so they didn't see how strong Obsidian was. But I had seen Ellie, Lindsay, Taylor, Katie. They were not going to turn to each other on that Kopaka tribe. And I was like, and they have Jack, and they have George, and they've got Emily with them. Like, they have everything. Like, they're going to steamroll us, and they don't like us either. We have this perception of being, like, we're the exact antithesis of what they want to see. We're playing these game body aggressive games, and they just want to have a little quesadilla friendship alliance. Like, they just want to, they could have easily, even with Katie out of the game, all they had to do, steamroll and get rid of me and Noah. And then if they want to use Grace and Lindsay Adams, they can. But if they don't want to, get rid of them too. And then they can still get rid of Emily, Ellie, Justin at that point, and then take their little friendship alliance to the end. That's what they wanted to do. And, that's what it seemed like was going to happen. And so I was like, Saka's toast. And I was trying to figure out other plans in case it didn't work out. I wanted to stick with Saka because I thought that it had a better chance of me going longer in the game. But I wasn't sure that it was going to be feasible. So I was trying to make ulterior plans in case I was always trying, just like Cooper, I was always trying to be in with everybody, always trying to like have like backup plans within backup plans, and like George had a quote near the end of this show. I think it was in the second to last episode where he's like, the problem with Ian is that even if he is with you, he's always telling the other side that he's with them. And I was like, I watched that and I was like, well, what else would I tell them? Like, am I meant to tell them to their face, like, oh yeah, I don't want to work with you? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me.
I mean, I will say I wouldn't put it past you to do that, because after the capture the flag challenge, you did goes straight to Ellie's face and all of our faces saying, "Why did you guys do that? That was a dumb move
Oh,
for you."
this is another thing I did that was like that again, it was like I don't fully understand how these things work. Was that similar to what you're saying, Katie, earlier, where I said I would like vote you off at 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
I said the same thing to Noah. And similar to that, a lot of the time in the game, I told people the truth and they didn't like I thought that if I said sometimes I was like, if I say things other than what they expect me to say, it would be more obviously a lie, you know? Like if I tell Katie I'm gonna go us final two, like she would never believe that anyways. So why even bother? Like she'll be like, if I tell her I want to get rid of you at 4, that's being honest, and then maybe she'll want to keep me in until almost that point, you know? If I tell her I want to go to the end with her, doesn't she just realize immediately that's a lie? Like she would never believe me. And that's how I felt about lots of this stuff. I would say to people like, well, why'd you do that? You know, because like you should have done this. Cause I would think that if I said anything different, they would like get annoyed at me. But it turns out people don't want to know the truth. They don't want it. They want to be lied to. They want to be told these platitudes and they don't want the truth. Like most of my pitches to people were always like, I think you should do this because I think it would make sense with you for this reason. And usually I actually believed the rationale I was using because otherwise, why would they do it? Like they're not going to make a move that doesn't make sense for them. But the truth is in this game, they would. That's all they do. All they do is make moves that don't make sense for them. So I should be pitching completely different kinds of things than I am. Like I should be pitching like, oh, well, we're like good friends or like whatever, or like, you know, it's I want to come over to your house tonight in some cases. Like I should be pitching completely different. Some of these people were playing a completely different game than I was playing. You know, no shade on that, but
I will say though, and it's Sophia, I'm curious your opinions on this too. When it comes to a move during a specific week and why someone should vote someone out, I think that makes more sense to approach it the way that you are. But when it comes to making overarching promises of final two, I want to take you to the end, that is more something where it's like you want to hear it because you want to trust that person. You just can't fully trust that until you see the actions take place. So that's where it's like, well, I'm not going to fully believe that you're telling me let's go final two, because we can say that as much as we want until it becomes a reality, because so much could change during
yeah,
the game.
I
Kind of.
guess yeah, you're right. You're right. And like, you know, you're right. And Noah has also been like, if you were telling me final two from the beginning, I would have been more willing to stick with you. And I think I just am like, how could you ever believe that? Like if Noah had been telling me final two, I would always be like, sure. But if you think I'm a big threat near the end, you're going to get rid of me. Like what? It's almost
I
pointless.
mean, yeah.
But
That's also why I don't say final two right at the beginning anyway.
but I was wrong about that. And it's also just like once you're viewed as one of these people, like a Cooper or like a me, it's like people will. It's like the Coopers and the Me's and the Jacksons of the world. It's like the Pirates of the Caribbean line. You can always trust a dishonest man to be dishonest, you know? It's the honest people you have to watch out for, you know? Like you could always trust that if you look at like seasons 4 and 5, did Jackson ever like blindside a close ally? Once, Eliza.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no. Like Cooper, he only does well, Cooper's a little different, but mostly these people are going to stick with you if they think it makes sense for them. And like that's a reason to stick with those kinds of people and trust them, because you trust that like it's not going to matter to them if you do something sketchy against them. Like Sam and Adam try to get Cooper out, he's working with them like the very next week. Why? Because he thought it made sense. They're not going to hold any grudges. Like I would vote with anybody at any point if I thought it made sense. But in some ways that also makes you less trustworthy to some degree, because you're not just going to like loyally blindly vote the same way every time.
Yeah, like you're trying to make moves that benefit yourself, which is like the whole point of the game. Like you're supposed to be the sole survivor. But a lot of people value that loyalty.
The philosophy of Survivor, I think, is very interesting. I think that like having edited it all, having played this extremely aggressive game, get rolled at the end, on and on and on, then editing it all, yada yada. My view on it is I have some probably fairly controversial views. One is it's just not a good game. Like, and I'm not just saying that because I like lost, though obviously like I would be happier about Survivor if that particular game if I had won. But I've played other Survivor games after this and stuff, and just the length of time. I have a view of like luck to length. So like the shorter a game is, the more luck I'm fine with being involved. You know, like Candyland, shoot some ladders, whatever. It's like 10 minutes. So it's fine if it's a lot of luck involved. The longer the game is, the more it's like, if I play something for months and months, it's kind of annoying for it to just come down to like a tribe swap, or like the demerge. It's like, what was Ellie supposed to do? Nothing. It was just complete chance. It's annoying for that kind of stuff to happen. And so much of Survivor is who wins the challenges, who has the idols. There's so much luck involved. And more so, the entire conceit of it is not actually a game. The conceit of Survivor is a TV show, a very entertaining TV show. It's a social experiment, about what's going to happen when we win. By definition, the people who are voted off have to decide who wins. People talk about a bitter jury. There's no such thing as an unbitter one. Like, every person who is on the jury is bitter to some degree because they're annoyed that they didn't win.
Yeah.
Or that they lost. And being on the jury is their last chance to kind of like stick it to those, to find some way to salvage their own dignity, in defeat. That's how a lot of people treat the jury. And so, it's a social experiment more than a game. That's what makes a good TV show. But for me, it's not a super enjoyable game to play. It's too damaging to relationships. Similar to a lot of stuff Leia says, like the entire conceit of life is you'll be building bonds with the express purpose of not breaking them. In Survivor, it's the complete opposite. Like it is a zero-sum game. And the people who play it with like this insane loyalty in mind, it comes off as insane to the other people, like, like me and like the me and Coopers of the world can never understand that. And so it's kind of like, I don't know. I found it very unenjoyable to play the next couple of times I played Survivor, and I didn't do nearly it wasn't like I kept going to the end and losing or whatever. Like sometimes I did good, sometimes I did bad, but I didn't find it to be a super fun game in the way that I think most of the other people, because I didn't come into it as a Survivor super fan or anything,
Right.
As an editor, I was really, really interested in it, and I really liked editing it. I thought it was a really fun thing to edit, a really fun show to tell. But it's not something that I actually really did enjoy playing that much. I mostly found it annoying. And when I think about Survivor Michigan, I don't think about season 6 really. I think about the seasons I edited and produced. Season 6 is it's just kind of like an anecdote to me. I just don't think about it. It's not part of my Survivor Michigan experience. And it is, but it just isn't a big part of it. It's not a part I think that much about.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just so wild in my head to hear, because it did you did make it to the end. And for so many people, that would be like a huge accomplishment.
It's a zero-sum game.
It doesn't.
It's a zero-sum game. You win or you lose. And getting 0 votes is embarrassing. I was friends with everybody on production. Other people who lost, nobody would have dared say to Leia's face, well, I guess Lucy did at the after party, but most people would not have dared to say to Leia's face, make fun of her for losing All Stars or, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone knew me and everyone thought it was really funny. Crouch the night of came over and was like, so now you realize you're worse than Tom, right? That was his whole thing, the whole game. He was like, you're worse than Tom at Survivor was his take. And he was like, so now you realize you're the worst Survivor Michigan player in history, and you terrible, all this stuff. And I think Tom gets too much hate as well. He doesn't play, in the way that most people understand. But if you understand what he's doing, it actually makes some sense. But so Crouch made a lot of fun of me. Kevin, there was a lot of people.
Kevin.
There was a lot of people just kind of piling on, and I was like, this is not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, besides the not fun part, I mean, I guess some of more what we could talk about may not be considered fun in your eyes, but at least the journey to get to the end. What votes or what gameplay do you feel like? I know you said you were set up the best position after my vote out. Were there other votes during the merge, during the online portion of the game, that you felt like you were in good control and you were feeling solid about your game? Other votes where you were just like, WTF? Sorry,
Sophia.
We have Roger.
Oh, yes.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah,
The king.
I'm sorry.
Return of the king.
I'm very tired. I made it.
Roger's here, everyone.
I don't know how much I'll be talking. I feel like I'm more here to like absorb than speak, but I'm in this present.
No worries. You know me, I can do enough talking forever for everybody.
I know I didn't have to worry about this still going. I was like, oh, we're not even halfway through basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the merge. Oh wait, Sophia. Oh, you were gonna say that Rogers got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, at the merge, from my point of view, pretty much immediately every single thing went to shit. The pandemic changed the game completely. Like there was no longer like any kind of flow of information. It was just everyone knew everything all the time. We had nothing to do. Basically, they had to figure out how online classes were completely fake. Nobody had anything to do, and it was just all you do all day long was sit there and do Survivor. You'd FaceTime somebody, and then you'd go, I'll FaceTime somebody else, and you just go through your Rolodex, and that was literally all you would do all day long. So nothing was a secret. Everybody knew fucking everything all the time. And it was really difficult because the first thing that happened was the Justin vote. And the whole week of the Justin vote, I was still living in what I would call the normal universe of it's Obsidian versus us, and they're trying to vote off one of us, and they know we have at least one idol because they know about Noah's idol, but they don't know about the rest of our idols, and we're gonna have to play an idol correctly a couple weeks in a row if we want to get numbers back in this game, or I'm gonna have to just give up on Saka, let Noah and Grace get voted off, and try to like find some way to get to the end with Obsidian. And all week George is saying like, hey, I'm gonna tell you guys who they're voting for. And I was like, no, you're obviously not. Like most of the week, I was just like, how dumb does George think we are? Genuinely, how stupid does he think we are? That we're gonna believe they're gonna all put the votes on Lindsay Adams? Are you kidding me? They're gonna get us to waste the night on Lindsay Adams and just vote me or Noah off? Like, are you really think that we are truly that stupid? And George started getting annoyed with me. Because I would say to him, like, I obviously don't believe this, you know? And he'd be like, why don't you trust me, man? Like, come on. Like, why don't you trust me? I'd be like, because this is insane. It doesn't make any sense. And, but that's exactly what happened. And they had dangled. This is actually, fun fact, Cooper came up with the strategy of dangling the half idol in front of George, which is how he ended up wanting to flip. Me and Noah and Grace were sitting around and we were like, we're fucked. Like, what are we going to do? And Cooper's like, you could offer George the half idol. We were like, that won't work, but sure, we could try it, I guess. And it did work. George threw away his entire game for the chance of getting half an idol that was never going to be given to him because Justin would obviously give it to Lindsay R 20 days out of 19. Like, what are we doing here? In what universe is George ever going to get it? So he threw away his entire game on the chance of getting a half idol that he had no chance of getting.
Oh, George.
And so whatever. I guess this is going to work. We're going to play them all the votes on Lindsay Adams vote. And Justin will go home. I didn't know at the time that everybody on Obsidian knew Justin was going home. Justin was the only person blindsided by him going home. I think Justin and Lindsay Adams were the only two people that didn't know what was going to happen at that vote. And part of that was I remember at the time I was like, let's not bring Lindsay Adams in because then like my whole plan was that I was trying to be in with George and Emily told me right before Tribal, it's actually Noah. You should vote for Noah. And so I voted for Noah just to build trust with Emily because I was like, next week, now Emily will really trust me. And next week, either I'll know what their plan is so we could play another idol on the right person, or I can just fully flip and go with them if Saka seems dead. I had no idea that every single person at Obsidian knew Justin was going home. And because that makes zero sense. But once I found that out, my brain over the course of the Emily week is when my brain started to collapse more and more as the reality of what was happening slowly became clear to me. And I found out that like George had gone to Noah and told him that he knew about Noah's idol. I was like, why in the world would he do that? And like it all just started to fall apart. I found out that there was now a new alliance of 6 of Noah, George, or no, not George. It was Noah, Grace, Lindsay Adams, Emily, Lindsay R, and Jack. And I was like, why would they want to do that? What are we talking about here? Like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense at all. This is anti-Survivor. They just let Justin go home. And they were so mad at George. They were so mad at George for being the mole and leaking the plan, even though Taylor knew all about this as well. Taylor knew all about this. And for so long, for many years, everyone's always given Taylor incredible credit. What a social genius. She got everyone to hate George. And I agree that it's very impressive how easily she turned everybody on George. But unfortunately, I do think it's very bad strategy, because what does it do for Taylor to have everybody hating George, her own alliance member? Why does it make sense for her to turn her alliance against itself and then vote off Emily, somebody who is so loyal to them, who is never, ever going to turn on them? What are we doing? What is going on here? This does not make any sense at all. I could not believe they wanted Emily out of the game. I think that one just, it will never make sense to me, ever. It will never make sense to me. There's no way it can make sense to me. It breaks my brain. It gives me a headache trying to think about it. It's beyond flabbergasting. It's just we're voting off our own numbers. We're so mad at George for no reason. Did George even blindside us? No. We all knew Justin was going home. Like, we're mad at him for, I guess, the idea of him wanting to do something that doesn't involve us, but he was never planning to vote them out. It's like Taylor did the exact same thing, and now we can't get George, so we're going to get Emily. It was just like, why? Why are you leaving Lindsay Adams in the game? Why do you want to be in a final 6 with Lindsay Adams? She's doing nothing for you. Lindsay Adams is obviously just like with Noah and Grace to the very bitter end of time. And by what possible rationale would it make sense for these people to be working with her? Jack realized one vote too late that this all made no sense for him. The next week, Taylor vote, Jack finally understands that nothing that's happening makes sense for him either. But he should have realized it a week earlier. I was pitching to Jack and George, Emily, Ellie, hey, we got to make our own alliance. We can't have this fucking nonsense going on. But oh my God, it didn't work. It didn't work. George tells Noah he knows about Noah's idol. Why does he do this? Ostensibly to curry favor with Noah, right? But then George comes right back to me and says, hey, Ian, we can save Emily by playing your idol. I was like, what idol? He's like, well, Noah told me all about your idol. I was like, why would he do that? George's like, because I told Noah that you told me about his idol. I was like, so let me get this straight. You want me to play an idol on your closest ally because you told everyone in the game that I have an idol? What? By what metric should either me or Noah ever trust you again? Basically, like, all you're doing is going back and forth telling everyone everything. I don't understand how this is meant to build trust with me at all. If anything, it's just completely ruined my position with everyone. And yeah, like, no one ever trusted me after that, basically.
At that moment, were you more mad at George or more mad at Noah? Because it sounds like they both... Okay, that makes sense.
Noah, I didn't like it, but I understood it was a gut moment reaction. Me and Noah actually did talk later, and we're like, we both shouldn't have done this. Like, it was actually some confusion also, because I didn't tell George about... The only person I told about Noah's idol was Katie, and she had told the rest of them right before. It was like a very confusing period of time. Like, I told them when Katie was getting... I didn't want there to be any chance of me not getting votes the Katie week. And I thought something that Katie and them could try, and maybe should have tried, is put all the votes on Noah and call my bluff. You know,
we're not going to get into that. I tried it. You were the only name Justin would write down. We've been through this.
Okay. But I was worried that was something they could try, would be if they put all the votes on Noah, they're going to call my bluff. Am I going to go to Rocks? And the answer is probably no. I'm probably going to flip and go with them and vote off Noah. So I thought they might try that. So I told them Noah had an idol, and that was actually before I officially knew he did. I just kind of figured he did. And then Noah shows me his idol. And so, like, in my head,
me after he showed you his idol.
So I like confirmed it after.
You
that,
confirmed.
But I'm pretty sure I was saying it before that.
Okay, yeah.
So in my head, it was like everyone kind of knew about Noah's idol, or I didn't really fully realize, again, with pandemic, spring break, everything, I didn't realize that this was a bullet that could be used against me. That somebody could say to Noah, oh, Ian told us about your idol. I kind of didn't really understand that was something that could happen, or I think I would have told Noah that they knew about it. But I think it was like everyone in the game just kind of figured he had one, sort of. You know how these things are. So I just didn't realize it was going to be that big of a deal. So I don't blame Noah for immediately telling George that. But it was tough because then everyone knew he had idols. But fun fact, in season 6, people don't care. They don't care. Me and Noah just had public idols for like a month. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. It was crazy.
I know you guys kept showing them at Tribal, and people just like they didn't really do anything about it. I get it in the sense of like it's hard. It is hard to get someone out when they have an idol and you know it, but like that for that long is crazy.
Yeah,
dude, I'm with you. I thought it was insane. I was like, they're just letting us waltz around with these idols.
Like once it went online, people weren't playing Survivor. Like I feel like it was. I mean, it just felt
playing
like
the entire time.
A different game. The aspects of Survivor, idols, advantages, people just kind of slipped their mind because they weren't there in person.
Maybe. My view is that most of these people were just very passive players and they were very afraid to ever take a shot. Like even when we voted off Noah, they did not want to vote for Noah. This actually is one part of the edit that really bothered me that it wasn't shown. They wanted to vote for Grace or Lindsay Adams because if I played an idol and Noah played an idol and we vote for Noah, then Jack would go home. They did not want to vote for Noah because they were like, it's too risky, but they wanted to vote for Grace or Lindsay Adams. But from my point of view, there's no way in hell I'm leaving Noah in the game with an idol and a half idol. If I'm playing my idol, Noah's playing his idol. So he's either out of the game or he no longer has an idol. And like and I didn't care if Jack went home, obviously. So like and they had to do it. They told me their whole plan. And I was like, all right, well, it's gonna be Noah. Like I want it to be Noah, and they kind of had to go along with that because they needed my idol for their plan to work. So like if they voted differently from me, Jack just goes home.
Mm-hmm.
So
were you surprised that Noah didn't play his idol when he went home? Because like I was a little okay.
Well, I mean, I was more like relieved than surprised. Like the reason I was fine voting for Noah is because I thought he wasn't going to play it. His whole plan was predicated on me. They were splitting votes on me and Jack in case I played an idol. So as long as we played everything right and didn't let them realize that I knew about their plan, then they weren't gonna, panic. I don't think and like do anything. But I mean, I think he should have just played it, obviously. But he should have never done. They should have never been coming after me at 7 anyways. They should have just not done any of that. Is my view.
Were the idols still like? How long were the idols good until?
6.
6. Oh.
6 is the last time you can use them. So we were both trying to get to 6. And Noah had promised Lindsay R that if he got to 6 with his idol, he'd give her the half idol. So that's the other reason I couldn't let Noah stay in the game till 6 because him and Lindsay are both still in the game at 6. Now they're both playing idols, and I don't have an idol. Like if I don't win immunity, there's only like 3 people who are going to be able to get votes.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense because you said something about that, and I completely forgot about the half idol, and I was like, okay, that makes sense.
The half idol. Endless problems. All it did was cause me endless problems. I also couldn't. When I found out about it, I was like, "Why didn't Luke give me the half idol? I was the only ally he had in the entire game, basically." But he just liked Thages. They were like broy.
Yeah, and then it was kind of a wacky transfer of those idols because no one actually knew about Justin and Thages. So then Thages giving it to Justin was just kind of out of nowhere, and then yeah. But. So, Ian, throughout the merge, you're talking about the fact that everyone is voting against their own interests, voting out their allies. But at that point, you also wanted to kind of stay Saka strong. Was there ever a point where you were like, if I can just become the new leader of Obsidian, keep them from turning on each other, and become in the majority of numbers through that? Did you ever consider that? Or did you do that? Okay.
What I wanted the Emily week was to make a new majority of me, George, Jack, Emily, and Ellie. Okay. I thought it made a lot of sense. I was working closely with Emily and Ellie. Me and George were the only people talking to Emily and Ellie really closely. Jack was with Emily also, but I didn't really realize at the time that Jack didn't trust Emily at all because she had voted for him that one round, like 4 weeks earlier. But that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want any more part of this friendship alliance of Lindsay, Taylor, Noah. It just felt like they were not going to vote each other off. They had this half idol. I kind of thought Taylor and Noah were probably like secret number ones from before the game because they knew each other. At the time, I thought Noah and Taylor were like probably never going to vote each other off. The reality is they actually were less close than we thought, but it was hard to know that knowing they knew each other before the game.
Yeah. So
that whole thing was just scary, and they had too many people who were never going to vote for them. I was like, let's make a new majority of people who are kind of on the outs. But Jack, Jack didn't want to do it, basically. Basically, Jack didn't want to do it. He told them every plan we tried to come up with, he just told Lindsay and Taylor, who told Noah and Grace, and then Noah and Grace would tell me, and it would just be a giant circle. So we couldn't come up with anything, and it was like me and George was banging our heads against the wall trying to come up with anything to save Emily because we really didn't want her out. But we couldn't come up with anything short of me playing an idol on her, which I obviously was not going to do. So that was tough. Jack pulled one of the dirtiest moves of the game, though, right before the Emily vote. Jack called up Emily and told her that George was the reason she was going home, and George had been pushing her name and stuff, and that's why she popped off at George at Tribal. I think it was an attempt at some kind of jury management from Jack, but it was really dirty since George was one of the only people trying to save Emily and had been her closest ally the whole game.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, I was like, why is Emily going off on George? That makes like a lot more sense.
It was funny as hell though.
It was hilarious.
Somebody the Taylor vote, the demerge.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. How'd you like that twist?
Hey, demerge was great for me. It basically saved my ass. It let me just skip kind of a whole week. It was amazing for me because I was in such a bad spot at that point. But it's a horrible twist. Horrible. It just of season 6 and season 3, the 2 seasons with the demerge, 3 of the 4 people who go home were in great spots in the majority and just got fucked by this shitty. Like, it's a dumb twist. I think it'd be a little bit better if you were in it for more than 1 week, because then at least have to be some kind of planning for the next week. But Taylor does just get completely fucked. Like, that's probably the only combination of people she goes home in. And in season 3, both the people that went home, Emily Paddock and Emily Bachwick, were just in the majority and then just got screwed over by the way that like demerge broke down. So
yeah, that's what's so frustrating about a twist like that, is that it's all luck based, and like kind of what you're saying about how if the game is longer and the further you go on, you want it to be more strategy based, but it can't be sometimes.
Yeah. It was good for me though.
Yeah.
It was insane. I just told them I'm playing my idol, and they literally did. Taylor at Tribal said, "Well, there's only 2 people who can get votes this week, or something, or 3 people." She basically just assuming I'm like immune. It's like the way they viewed the idols was crazy. Like, why am I going to play it if I'm not getting any votes? People were mad at me for not playing it too. I remember after school, like, you're just showing how untrustworthy you are if you tell people you're going to play it or not. I was like, you're all trying to vote me off next. Yeah. So why should I play my idol and then go home unanimously at 7? Like, what are we talking about?
That doesn't. At a certain point, or just to a certain extent, it felt like so many players were not putting themselves in the other player's shoes as to like what makes most rational sense for that person.
I think Jack voting off Taylor is an interesting move. Like, it was his number 1 ally. It might be really stupid that he did that. I don't really know. I think Jack was drawing dead though once Emily's out of the game, is my view. Jack cannot win. Like,
it seemed like he had a pretty tough path to the end.
I don't see a scenario where he would have won once Ellie and Emily were both out. He needs to go to the end with Emily or Ellie to win, or Lindsay Adams. So once 2 of those 3 were out, I don't know how he's supposed to win. But I don't know.
But either way, he didn't make it to the end.
No, but it's just a question of like, should he have not voted off Taylor as number 1 person? Like, I honestly don't know. But like, that power structure needed to go down. So like, taking out Taylor did open the door to more options for sure. But like you said,
and that's the thing is, Jack doing that also kind of ruined his relationship with Lindsay R a little bit.
It really didn't.
No, because he gained it back. Like,
yeah,
he was able to gain it back, which was kind of impressive. I was like kind of surprised that Lindsay wanted to work with Jack at all. So I guess like they didn't really have much of a choice, but like he was able to get Lindsay back.
Yeah,
I guess it's true. Yeah, but still, just a weird move.
But you're right, Katie. I was trying to get super in with Taylor, and Taylor was saying a lot of stuff to me that no one else in the game was saying. She said, "I want to take you to the end. I wanted to be final 2 with you." She said, "I think I'll destroy you at the end. That's why I'm comfortable taking you to the end." Which worked for me. That was like a really solid pitch that made sense. Like, it made me believe her that she wanted to take me to the end. You know,
that's an interesting strategy.
I thought it was smart.
I get it. It is smart, I think. But I don't think I've ever seen someone try to do that.
I think it could only work on someone like me, which I will give Taylor. I feel like she understood what she needed to say to my face to get me on her side, which was she was saying like, "You're in a really bad position. No one trusts you. Like, it's hilarious." Like, she was like laughing at me basically. And she was like, "I'll go to the end with you because like I'll obviously destroy you." So like, she was like, "But you should just do it with me because you should just roll the dice. Like, no one's going to take you except for me." She's like, "No one else will even consider taking you to the end. So you should just go with me because I'm going to." I was like, that's an interesting pitch. I don't even dislike that. I'm kind of swayed by it, in fact. But
you still,
I had a video that I think wasn't shown because it'd make it too obvious, but that we were gonna vote off Taylor, where I said like, yeah, like Taylor talked to me for like an hour, and now I like want to go to the end with her. I trust her so much, and I was like, and it also makes me want to vote her off, because I was like, if in like 2 days Taylor can like get me the most game body, like scumbag in this entire thing, to like say that I trust her so much and all this stuff. How deep down the rabbit hole of Taylor are all the rest of these fucking clowns like Lindsay, except Jack? These people will probably never ever turn on her if she's been, you know, working them for months. Like they probably will just never do it. So like if we have a shot, maybe we just need to get rid of her, because like my whole plan to beat her would still be predicated on getting her out. And if people won't do it, then she just has to go.
Was that for the demerge? Was it like immediately like Taylor over George, or was there still kind of like a debate?
No, it was, well, most of it, the week, it was just George. There was no other option. It was going to be George.
Okay.
And then like the night before tribal, George calls me and he's like, hey, I think Jack's like willing to vote Taylor. I was like, that's a good one. That's funny. That's hilarious. And then it was one of many times when I was like, that would never happen. And then Jack called me and Jack and I talked for a while, and I was like, all right, I think Jack is going to do this. I think he is going to do this. And I was like, wow, Jack, I'm shocked you want to do this, but all right, sounds good to me. I'm down. Anyone but me.
Anyone but me. There you go. There you go.
But yeah, but voting off Taylor was tough. Voting off Taylor was the only person since the merge that I felt bad voting out.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I kind of felt bad for Emily, but Emily was so bad at the game that I didn't like feel that bad. But I did feel like Emily didn't deserve to go home, and it was stupid that it was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, who merge after the demerge? So that's Emily and Taylor. Who goes after that? That's the Noah blindside?
Noah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We sort of discussed the Noah blindside, but my view of the Noah blindside was basically just that like all week Jack and George were offering me basically nothing, which confused me since we had just worked together ostensibly. But it seemed like they just didn't have a plan at all. They weren't telling me anything, which pushed me more towards Saka, but I already wanted to go to the Final Four with Saka. I thought that I couldn't beat any of the Obsidians at the end. I thought that it was an Obsidian heavy jury. And I thought that Emily and Ellie and Justin and T-Rex are people who are going to just vote for the people they know. They're just going to vote for an Obsidian. I kind of still think that might be true. That's what I felt at the time. And so I was like, I want to go to the Final Four with Saka, and then I want to blindside Noah. I want Grace and Lindsay Adams and I will agree Noah's the biggest threat. Let's vote him off at 4. And I didn't know at the time that Grace would never have done that. But I thought it was the move that made the most sense for everybody. And I was saying this to Noah. I was like, dude, let's go to Final Four, and then we'll just come for each other. And whoever wins will win the game. Like, that's what we want to do. That's what we should do. And I think Noah should have just stuck with that, because he knew that Grace and Lindsay Adams would never turn on him, you know? And so he should have just been fine with that. But he wasn't. He was too scared of me, because he did recognize that I was the only other really competent player, the only other real threat to him, to the moves he wanted to make, you know? And he knew that it was the fire making challenge, which the rest of us didn't know. So he knew that if I made it through 7, at 6, I play my idol. Now I'm at 5. That's the last vote. If I win that challenge, I'm chilling. Mm-hmm. You can't vote me off, but I still would have to win like 2 more challenges probably to make it to the end. So I just think he should have been willing to, like, you know, maybe risk it, because playing their steal a vote at 7 when they're going to turn it into 3-3 at 6 made no sense. It was just not rational. It was not logical to be using that steal a vote the way they did. If they wanted to get me out, they should have just straight blindsided me and not used any of their advantages. Or they should just, I don't know. I think it didn't make a lot of sense. I thought it was insane they trusted Lindsay R with all of this. But like you say, they thought she was so mad at Jack that she would do this.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think Lindsay R played that week very well.
She did. She did. I always said that the Noah move was Lindsay R's move if it was anyone's.
Yeah.
And because I thought she had just masterfully manipulated them. I don't know how, honestly, she did it. But
there was a tribal where I think Brady asked, like, who is taking credit for the Noah move, and Lindsay was straight up like, yeah, I did that. I thought it was pretty funny that she just like straight up was like, yeah, it was me.
Yeah, that's why it was crazy to me when I found out, spoilers for once we get to the end, Lindsay R would have lost to Grace as well, probably also like 10-0 or like 9-1 or something if I had voted for Lindsay R. But I found out yeah, the idea that Grace was a larger threat to win than Lindsay R will never make sense to me. I thought it was insane. Like at Final Five, the jury was saying to themselves, if Ian votes off Grace, then Ian will win. He just has to have the right read to vote off Grace here. And from my point of view, nothing in the world could convince me that it would make more sense to get rid of Grace, who was completely blindsided the Noah vote and the Taylor vote, basically, versus Lindsay R, who had masterminded. In that, she would have masterminded her closest ally. Taylor goes home, then she masterminds the Noah blindside and then gets George out. And now she somehow survives like the next round. Like she was just, I don't know. I felt like she was playing a much stronger game. But yeah, so it really surprised me that Lindsay R really didn't get a lot of credit by the jury. Honestly, that really shocked me. But so yeah, so we get Noah out, and now it's final 6.
Yeah.
This was the peak of my Survivor career. Was idling Noah out and then winning immunity like 20 minutes later. That was incredible. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm safe. Oh my God, I'm safe. They can't get me. I have immunity. And in the show, it looks like there's this whole like drama going on at Tribal, but in reality, I wanted Noah out because I knew Grace and Lindsay Adams would come back to me because they would have nowhere else to go. And I wanted George out, and I wanted to go to the end with Grace and Lindsay Adams. Me and Noah had both wanted to go to the end with Grace and Lindsay Adams basically the entire game. So as soon as Noah was out, I knew they came back to me. I obviously didn't want to go to the end with George. I didn't trust that George and Jack and Lindsay wouldn't vote me off. And so pretty much the dust hadn't even settled on Noah's grave by the time me and Grace had this really long conversation where we came clear about everything. Grace tried to, at first she tried to tell me that she didn't know. She's like, I had no idea you were getting votes. They told me it was going to be Jack. I was like, Lindsay already told me everything, Grace. So, nice try. But also like, when you voted for me, what do you mean you thought it would be Jack? Doesn't make sense. How would I possibly believe that? But we were like, well, obviously we have to go to the end together and we have to get rid of the Obsidians. And George is the biggest threat and he's the biggest challenge threat. I was like, with George is out, the rest of these guys aren't that good at challenges. And I knew the game trivia was going to happen at some point. I was just thinking like with George out, I'm probably winning the rest of these challenges. So we had like 6 different plans. All of them were trying to get Lindsay and Jack to flip on George. But the main thing was that if we got to the discussion point, everything we said was going to be about making it seem like Grace and Lindsay Adams were not working with me, that they wanted to go girls strong, and that they would vote me off next, and everything like that. So that was everything that was being said at Tribal was an act, a farce to play up that point of view. And it worked. Somehow George went home unanimously.
What would have gone, like what could have gone wrong then?
Well,
like what were you guys most worried about that you needed to play up everything?
Lindsay R or Jack could just say, no, we're going to Rocks. We all have to agree on it to be George. They just say, no, we're going to Rocks. And then it would go to Rocks. And fun fact, they actually did the rock draw. They were going to use they did the wheel. And they did it anyways to see what happened. And Grace would have drawn the rock and gone home. So true story. That's another one. Maybe I would have won the game if I had gone to Rocks for George.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that is probably the main point where Lindsay and Jack like lost the game. I mean, there's probably a lot of points, but I think that specifically, like, that was a tough spot for them. And I get why they did it. Like, I see that, like, they fully believe that you were going next. So, like, it makes sense from their perspective, but, like, they probably should have went to Rocks.
The biggest thing was that they should not have let me go last, right? So, like, again, from kind of a TV standpoint, I knew that if it was going to go to this, I wanted to say it's George. Like it's Liz. So I was like, I'm going to just, not even for strategy, I was just like, I'm going last no matter what, because I want to say it's George.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just not going to say anything during this and like as little as possible because I want to be the one to say it's George.
Yeah.
If that happens. I was like, I can't pass that up. I have to give George his own it's Liz.
That was great. And the fact that it happened to George.
Exactly.
So good.
But from Lindsay and Jack's point of view, if I'm willing to let George go home, that means that I don't believe anything that's being said at Tribal, because all of Tribal is Grace and Lindsay Adams being like, we can't trust Ian at all. He's obviously the biggest threat after George. Like, we can't let either of them get to the end. Blah 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 blah. If I believe, like, I should just go to Rocks if what they're saying is true. So clearly, I don't believe any of that. Like, they should have asked me first, Ian, what are you doing? And if I'm willing to let George go home, they should go to Rocks, because that means I don't think any of this is real, and I'm going to just go, and like me and Grace are working together. But it's not what happened. Then we get to Final 5 and Final 4, not particular interest. At the time, I was really nervous if I didn't win the challenge at 5, I'd be voted off because I didn't like Grace and Lindsay Adams had just been saying that. Like, what if it was like, what if that was true?
A double
But
bluff, yeah.
the reality is it wouldn't have happened. Grace would never have turned on me. At that point, Grace plays a very loyal game. That's what she does. And once Noah was out, then I just kind of slotted in there as her person. And it wasn't really shown in the show, but me and Grace did have a pretty deep relationship at this point. And this was like a big thing. Like that's part of why I was so upset with Grace for going against me at 7 was because I just thought that Grace throughout the game was playing for Noah, not herself. Everybody was coming to her constantly like, hey, you're going to turn on Noah eventually. And she kept saying that she would do it later. And I believed that right up until after Noah went home, she told me like I had a final 2 with Noah since day 1. I would never have ever turned on him, all this stuff. And I was like, what do you mean you would have never turned on him? Like you would have just lost. I don't understand. And she was like, that he was my final 2. Like, and for me, that's when I lost. I was like, that's where I lost all respect for Grace's game for me, and I get that most other people didn't like ever have that conversation or never like fully maybe realize that was the case. But like, I was just like, I don't understand how I can respect your game at all if you just want to lose the game. Like you're just fine going to the end and losing. Like, I don't know. I can never vote for somebody who that's what they want to do. And you can have a shield, but you have to get rid of their shield. If your plan is to go to the end and lose, like, I don't understand. I don't really understand that. There's not really a good thing that can rationalize that to me. But so Grace would not have turned on me, and me and Grace were very, very tight near the end. It's lonely near the end of the game. There's not that many people left. It's the pandemic. There's not that many people to talk to. We were talking nonstop, and we became very, very close. And fun fact, at Final 4, if Grace had won the challenge, she would have taken me to the end. If I had won the challenge, I would have taken Grace to the end as well. And the only reason that might not have happened would be if we decide that I need to compete in the fire making challenge because we don't trust Lindsay Adams to get rid of Jack, and we don't want to go to the end with Jack because we're worried that like the Obsidians could all vote together. So it was both that we believed that any of the Obsidians might beat us because of all the Obsidians on the jury, and we were also telling each other that to like continually build up this trust. It's like a self-repeating cycle, basically.
Do you think Grace genuinely thought she could beat you, though?
She thought it was going to be really, really close. She thought it was going to be a tie vote with Lindsay Adams as the deciding vote.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's because me and Grace talked a lot about this both before and after the game. And she thought it was going to be really, really close. She did not think it was going to be like tens. None of us, nobody in the game, including Grace, had the perception of Grace that the jury ended up ultimately having. Is the truth. Like Grace herself did not think she was going to win like 10-0 at all. She thought it was going to be really close. She thought that George was going to be backing me and that Jack was going to be backing me and that Emily and Ellie were going to vote for me. I thought I would have Emily and Emily for sure because Grace never spoke to them, never even gave them the time of day. Yeah. So, there was a lot of wild cards though. Like no one knew what T-Rex was going to do. No one really knew what Justin was going to do. Fun fact, Justin's the person who was closest to actually voting for me. True story.
At the time.
Yeah, at the time,
wow.
Justin, Jack, and T-Rex, the producers thought that Justin and T-Rex were going to vote for me going into Final Tribal because T-Rex had said he just cared about who won more challenges. Apparently, he had like not said anything in the jury, and the producers like, "Hey, T-Rex, what are you thinking?" He's like, "I heard that Ian won more challenge, therefore I think I vote for him," or something, was what he told the producers. But then he obviously didn't. Apparently, if I had answered his cheese question differently, he would have voted for me if I had known what his favorite cheese was.
It happens sometimes.
Oh, and Justin, that's an important question.
Yeah. And Justin was the one who apparently like wanted to the most, but like, again, there was a lot of you shouldn't waste your vote on Ian. Grace is about to get the perfect game. Do you want to be the one to ruin her perfect game, the first perfect game? That was a big thing on the jury. It was like, we don't want to ruin Grace's perfect game. And if Ian obviously isn't going to win, why should we? There was some people who were like, why should we waste votes on him? And there were some people who were like, we should throw Ian a few votes so he doesn't tie with Lindsay Adams. There were people saying that also. So
interesting. People thought you deserved second place.
Yeah. And Jack considered voting for me just to piss off the rest. Jack got so annoyed he got so annoyed by like the group think of it all, and he was so annoyed by the game itself at that point that apparently he considered voting for me. He told production he was considering voting for me to ruin Grace's perfect game, not because he cared about Grace or anything, but because he knew it would piss off a lot of the other people on the jury, and he was just so annoyed by them at that point that
That's
he was
funny.
He should have done it. Should have done it.
Should have, but losing. The truth is that losing 6-4 is just as bad as losing 10-0 in some ways.
Yeah, that's fair. I would imagine though. My thought of it is just the fact that there was no one advocating for your game is like the most disappointing part.
Yeah, I didn't understand how the jury works at the time. You know, you need to have somebody on the jury who actively wants you to win. You know, I was the whole time playing under this presumption that at Final Tribal we'd be like arguing, you know, like, oh, why should I win? But the reality is everyone has already decided. Everybody already knows they're voting for. Nothing you say at Final Tribal matters at all. And it doesn't, there's nothing that anyone could have said at Final Tribal that would have changed anything at all. Except for maybe, I guess, T-Rex votes for me if I give him a different cheese. And then I eventually read, and for a long time also, the first couple weeks after the game ended, I thought it was like an anti-Ian. I thought it was like a wrestle thing. Like that's what people were saying, sort of, you know? I was like, oh, they just didn't like that I was like gregarious. And the thing is, watching it back, I agree that I am actually like more over the top than a lot of other Survivor Michigan players. But the truth is that no one actually really cared about them. They actually just didn't really care about that. It was really more of this pro-Grace cult than it was anti-Ian, which I didn't realize at the time until I read the entire jury chat. And I read the entire jury chat. And this should be anyone listening to this. If you're in College Survivor and you think, oh, the finalists will never read this, you thought wrong.
It takes one person on production to add them to the chat.
All
or
it
to hand
takes
the
is
phone
one
over.
person to
Hand the
give you
phone
their
over.
phone. And I had way too many friends on production to ever have access to that thing. So I read the entire thing one dark night and in the throes of despair. And I was like, all right, I gotta know. And
I'm sure that was fun.
It wasn't. It was not fun, but I'm glad I did it because it at least let me fully understand. And I also think Survivor, in an ideal world, it would be a black box jury. Like the jury shouldn't even be able to talk to each other. Like the jury doesn't know what's going on in the game. That's why they're on the jury. If they knew what was going on, they'd still be in the game. So it's like, why is the entire conceit of the jury is just ludicrous to me. And I obviously am going to sound kind of bitter saying that, but I've watched enough College Survivor and Real Survivor to just feel like recent CBS seasons, like My Girl Cassidy, like what are we doing here?
Dude, don't
like,
remind me of that.
What are we doing
ridiculous.
here? Every person in the game wants to go to the end with Gabler, and then they get to the end and they're all like, "What a genius! What a genius!" It's like I've seen it on so many seasons. It's like every person in season 6 wants to go to the end with Lindsay Adams and wants to go to the end with Grace. And then on the jury, it's like, "Oh my God, it's so smart! What a genius! We never suspected her. We never wanted to vote her out." I'm like, if you don't want to vote someone out, that's not a good thing, honestly, for them. Like, at least in this is right. There's no like objective here. Okay. There's no objective truth. You can sit here and you can have whatever view you want. But in my point of view, it's like, who did we think was a threat to win the game when we were in the game? Who did we want out when we were in the game? If you want me out every week and then I get to the end, it's kind of like,
I completely agree with that mindset because, like, if your name is never thrown out there, either you're hiding behind some shield for half the game, or you're being taken to the end because you are a goat and no one thinks that they'll lose to you.
I mean,
I think there's something to be said for someone who is in such a good social position. I mean, we look at Taylor, and for the longest time in the game, no one was tossing her name out. Nobody was considering it. Obviously, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, one person throws it out and considers it. Everyone, the veil is lifted, and it's like, oh, wait, actually, maybe that would be a good idea. And if that didn't happen, or if someone like Taylor makes it to the end and her name wasn't thrown out because everyone was so in with her, but she was also, I mean, again, I wasn't there necessarily for Final Tribal. I don't know how Grace like fully explained her game outside of the edit, or what people were saying in the jury, but I feel like there can be a way that you know what's going on. You had your hand in everything that was happening. And because of that, people didn't bother putting
Taylor was viewed as a huge threat, but you weren't you couldn't say her name out loud or it would be you. So to
Yeah.
me, it was like Taylor had this incredible social game. Everyone trusted her. Everyone was eating out of her hand. Like she basically could do anything. She was able to turn her entire alliance against George for something they both did. Like she did have this insane social game that everybody wanted to work with her. And she was able to talk to different people and give them exactly what they want. And I think people just like started saying on the jury that that's what Grace was doing, but just in the game, no one was considering her a major factor. It was Noah, Grace, and Lindsay Adams, and you knew they were a set unit, and you knew they were always going to vote together, and you knew they were the super tight alliance. And Grace was telling people she was going to turn on Noah, and I thought she would at some point, but once it was clear to me that she never would have done that, to me, Final 7 was a game-losing move for Grace. I was like, you can't be that what you're wanting to do at 7 is just lose the game. If your plan goes to plan at 7, you get to 6, Noah has an idol, Noah wins the game. It's over. There's no chance to get rid of him. And I just thought it was a game-losing move. And I thought that the desire to lose the game is not, I can't respect it really. But not everyone saw that, you know? And I think I thought I'd be able to articulate that. And like, people didn't care. Noah asked Grace at Final Tribal, what did you do in the game without me? And her answer was the George blindside. It was like, well, you were out of the game then, Noah. So that's not really a good answer. Like, that's not like the truth is she didn't do anything in the game without you when you were in the game. And you were doing a lot more, you know? People didn't view it as like Grace and Noah as this equal duo. No. Noah would have crushed Grace at the end. And that's why I thought it was so bizarre that Noah didn't push for me to win at the end, because I was like, if I get the exact final 3 that you and I both wanted this whole time, like, do you think you would have deserved to lose to Grace? Would be my question. That was always my question to Noah, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, Noah and George were the 2 people on the jury I was most annoyed with in the immediate aftermath.
I can get Noah more to an extent just because like Noah and Grace did so much together, and I think Noah did view a lot of what he was doing as like him and Grace doing it. But I do see why like you'd be mad at George specifically.
Yeah.
Bye, Katie.
Noah, I agree that his rationale for it ultimately comes down to sort of a just, well, that's my closest ally, you know, and like I understand that, even though I don't like it, but it's like a rationale. And I can I can see how it's the case that he had worked with her the whole game. And like, I can understand it, even if doesn't really make sense to me. Like when I say like, oh, well, you thought you would beat Grace, so why shouldn't I beat her? You know, that's not really what he's arguing though. You know, what he's arguing is like, well, that was my closest ally, you know, sort of thing.
Yeah.
George is different. His rationale for it doesn't make any sense. His problem is that when I've talked to George about this season, George he genuinely believes that the Grace way of playing, that the social game, like the Natalie White of it all, the Gabler of it all, like George, I think, believes in that concept. He believes he's a true hard Survivor fan. He's watched the show his whole life. He watched Russell Hantz. He watched like that season Samoa. He watched all these other seasons. He truly believes that the social game should trump any other game, sort of. And that's like the right way to play Survivor. Well, that's all well and good, but that's not how you played the Survivor, George. So that's like, I'm like, how would you have ever planned to win the game? And his view of it is that he was playing that way. So like my issue with George is that George in Survivor, specifically in Survivor, I think he did a fantastic job editing the season, by the way. Incredible job. Simply his view of season 6 and like the actual events as we were playing them. He believes he is Grace Toll, but he was me. Like George is much closer to me than Grace, but he thinks that he is Grace. And I don't, it's like not, it doesn't like make sense in my head.
Yeah.
So yeah, George is the one who I thought I had been with the longest, who understood my game the most, and who would, and because at Final 6, when George was getting voted off, he said, no, don't believe anything they're saying. This is only happening because Ian wants it to happen. And after he said that, I was like, I'm good. George is he understands what's going on. He's going to push me on the jury. Nope, not at all. Not a little bit. On the jury, George and Noah George was like, he never made any plans. He was just told the plans, specifically the Noah boot. I was like, that's fine if you want to argue about me versus you, George, for the Noah boot. But Grace and Lindsay Adams were blindsided. They didn't even know the plan. So what kind of straw man argument is this? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. And there was a lot of, the jury just became a meme, basically. Like the last probably 4 weeks of the game, the jury chat was entirely like Lindsay Adams, people would just be like, she obviously sucks at the game, but she's great at flash games. Flash game queen, like, because she won the event. Flash game queen, Ian, bad social game, haha, Grace, genius social game, what a queen, get a win 10-0. That was pretty much like the last like month of jury chat. That's all that's discussed, basically. It's just like, oh my God, Grace queen, like Grace has the game in the bag. Pretty much from the moment Noah got voted off when he started pushing Grace in the jury. Before that, I did have some chance. Before Noah got out, it was much more open. Noah pushed Grace hard, and then George pushed Grace hard. That was pretty much it. I lost 2-0.
Yeah, when you have no when you have no cheerleaders on the jury and it becomes like 2 or 3 people that are just like being like, Grace, 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 everyone's just gonna like fall into that because they've fallen out of the like loop of the game much.
I didn't realize how much influence Noah would have on the jury because so many of the people disliked him in the game. Like Emily and Ellie. I just didn't think that. I thought they were going to vote for me for sure. But I didn't realize how much influence Noah would have over those kinds of people who a lot of people on the jury did just kind of go along with it. Same thing with Lindsay R and Jack. I thought they were going to vote for me over Grace. I thought they were working with me more. They knew I was playing harder, but they entered Lindsay R and Jack when they were in the game at Final 5 and 4. If you ask them who's going to win, Ian or Grace, they say Ian. Then they got voted off and saw everyone in the jury wanted Grace to win, and they just changed their mind. They're like, I guess it is just Grace, They didn't really fight for it at all. They were kind of burned out by the game as well. They just kind of entered the chat and were just like, all right, I guess Grace wins. Whatever.
Yeah, I feel like that does happen sometimes where the people at the end, like, you think they're going to have more influence than they do because, like, they've been in the game for longer, and then they're so burnt out that they don't actually, like, do that. I will say... you can
sorry. No.
Oh, I was just going to say, I will say, like, I don't know if I agree 100% on the comparisons of, like, Gabler and Natalie.
Yeah, you're right. That's not the same
those
thing.
Are like I think Grace played a pretty good game.
I was saying more of how George George is about that mindset,
Oh, okay, yeah. But like, I don't know, like, because I mean, if you think about it, Grace played the shield game like exactly how a shield game would be played. You hide behind your shield gets taken out. And then you basically play oh no, my closest ally is gone. And then like you find a new one and you gain everything that like that shield did basically. And that is what Grace did. I think, but I also agree to your point of like, if you're not going to take that person out, then it's like, are you actually like, should you be credited with that? And I think there's kind of like, it's like, yeah, she never had the chance to take it out, so that was never proven. So then she got credit for that, even though we officially don't know if she actually would have, because she never was put in that position, no matter what like she said.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think Grace, played like a bad game or anything like that. I thought she did play a good game. I just kind of thought that there's an understanding when you're in the game that like it's very hard to explain if you haven't played it or you haven't been in the situation where like there's people who you kind of understand that they're on a different level and like you can't let those people get to the end or they are going to win.
Yeah.
And there was kind of an unspoken agreement, or so I thought, between sort of me, George, Noah, and Taylor, that like we were really kind of controlling everything going, like we were really driving pretty much everything happening. And there was no moment where Grace was ever like driving something, where Grace ever was like, I need this to happen for my game. She just let, passive game. And that's fine for what it is. But I think that I was kind of like, I know that a lot of you guys would not have been okay losing to Grace if it had happened to them, like Taylor or Noah or George. I think they all would have tried to argue that they played better games than Grace. And
I find it interesting because, like, it's at least from the edit, from what I remember, it seemed like Grace was one of the main people being like, you can't take George and you can't take Ian to the end.
Exactly.
And that, like,
did.
That is one thing where I'm like, that is interesting that she's one of the people saying, like, you can't take Ian to the end. And then she took Ian to the end. Like, what are you doing there? But,
I guess you could argue that like I kind of won those challenges. Like she didn't really have a choice, I guess.
That's true.
But regardless, my view is that like, yeah, everyone was saying that. Everyone in the game was like, we can't take Ian to the end. And then on the jury, they were like, Ian never would have. He has no chance to win. I'm like, these two things are not congruous, guys. Like, but mostly most people just kind of, did what they were told, like they did in the actual game. It was I was also coming off of All Stars, where like really every person on the jury really did think for themselves, and they had these really intense discussions about the game and like Leia's list and all this, and like they were analyzing every little move. And each person that came in, the jury was always asking them all these questions, and they would go through the whole game again, basically. And like, they were like obsessive, and in a lot of ways, All Stars being right before this hurt me. One was that I was kind of overestimating a lot of what was going on. I thought people had these like super deep plans. They really didn't. And the same way on the jury, I kind of thought that I saw people as individuals. Oh, I worked with Emily. I worked with Ellie. So they're going to vote for me, or like, George or Noah played more similar games to me, so they're going to vote for me. But that wasn't how it was. They were very much a hive mind. They just kind of like came along to a certain point of view, and that's just the view they had, and they never really questioned it, which was very different from the All Stars jury.
I think All Stars juries are also very different. You just have they have a different like vibe to them.
Definitely. I just didn't realize that at the time, really.
Yeah.
At the time, nothing in the world could convince me to vote off Grace at 5 over Lindsay Randolph. But that if I had done that, I would have won the game, which is it just doesn't make sense to me. But I thought Lindsay Arp would have had as good a social game as Grace and the moves to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
But what would have been most interesting is if I had lost the challenge to Jack, and it had been Jack, Grace, and Lindsay Adams, because I do think George would have tried to push Jack. Lindsay Arp probably votes for Jack. I probably enter the jury, and I'm probably thinking I'm going to have to convince people to vote for Grace. But then I read the whole jury chat, lose my mind, become insanely bitter, find out that Grace is going to like steamroll me and all this shit. And I think I just go, I either team up with George. I'm like, dude, let's just convince everybody to have Jack win, or I vote for Lindsay Adams. I've thought about this. I think there's a chance I would have voted for Lindsay Adams. And my speech at Final Tribal is basically like, look, like I think that Jack probably played the best game of the three of you, maybe, or I think Grace. I'm like, look, I agree. Grace did play the best game of the three of you, actually, is what I'm saying, because I would have believed that. But the jury has told me that what we're voting for is who did the least, and whoever did the least is who played the best. That's what this jury has decided, and therefore, how could I reward the person who did not do by far the least? Like, if our voting criteria is simply who did the least, and doing the least is good, it means there's not a target on your back. People aren't after you. Then I was vote for Lindsay Adams, who did by far the least of anyone in the game. But that didn't happen. But I think that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But
okay, do you have any final thoughts? I assume you have to go to work soon. So
yeah, we can wrap this up. I don't know, not really. I mean, season 6, it was pretty annoying, not gonna lie. Not my favorite season of Survivor Michigan. That would be this one. But like I said earlier, it's weirdly not a major part of my Survivor Michigan experience. It's like an addendum that I did, and it was weird because now I know so much more about Survivor. If I did it today, I probably wouldn't play the exact same way. I wouldn't be as aggressive. I wouldn't be as crazy, probably, especially in Tribals. Most of what I was saying in Tribals was fake. The person I was yelling at always knew that it was fake, but other people didn't. And there was people on the jury who were like, we didn't like how you were always mad at Tribal. And I was like, that was just fake. It was always a plan. There was always a motive behind it. But people didn't really see that. A lot of people just thought I was just kind of a crazy person doing things for no reason. And I think if I played again, I would mostly very actively be thinking about put somebody on the jury who wants you to win, who understands your game. You need someone on the jury to be advocating for your game long ahead of time. When I think of like people are like, what's the biggest mistake you made? I'm like, in each individual moment, it's hard for me to really think I should have voted off someone different than I did with the information and abilities that I had, But I needed to make sure that I needed someone on the jury who wanted me to win. It's very simple. You need that. And I didn't have that. Because I was such a floater and flip-flopping over the place, there was nobody who really understood every part of my game. And I thought I could just explain it at the end, but you can't. It's way too late to do that. So that I think was where I messed up. I think Grace played a good game. I think I played a game that I would enjoy more. Like, it's the kind of game that I wanted to play. I would also, I've talked to Kura this, it's like, I would never be the people who come into Survivor, and it's a totally viable strategy to just kind of float to the end and play the shield game, whatever. The issue is that, and at the end, the person who's done that often wins over the person who's rubbed more people the wrong way. But most of those people get voted out. is the issue. And like, if you want to play your game without having any agency, I think that like people like me or Noah or George, as much as he doesn't want to admit it, they don't want to go out having no agency. They want to have agency. They want to be making moves.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, it's like Grace is always going to play how Grace is going to play, and I'm always going to play how I'm going to play. And
Yeah.
I don't really believe in jury management in the sense that I believe you shouldn't be dicks to people and piss them off, but I don't believe in the idea that you can quote unquote read the jury or know what kind of jury it's going to be. Because the reality is that
You never know.
I couldn't. A, you don't know. B, you can't really be different than you are. You can't really play differently than you are. People kind of have a way of playing Survivor, and that's how they're going to play. And I think you see that season in, season out. And so I don't think it's really, on a different season, on season 1, if I had the season 1 jury, I would have beaten Grace like 10-0 or something, Like I played a kind of Tarowski-esque game. I had more agency than Tarowski down the stretch.
Tarowski is a good comparison. I see that. That makes sense. But you definitely had like more agency.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had more agency than Tarowski, but Tarowski, he had more scare tactics.
Yeah.
But Brittany is a decent comp for Grace, I think. Like somebody who everybody kind of wanted to work with, everybody trusted. Everybody wanted to work with them to some degree, and they weren't really ever going to be voted off. So, that's the game. That's season 6. A pretty annoying season. I hope you guys enjoyed it more than I did. I thought it was fun to watch it back, but annoying at the same time.
I mean, like, as someone that didn't know that much about season 6, like, I thought it was a really fun season to watch, especially towards the end. Even though like a lot of
very unpredictable,
and even though a lot of the like fights were like just like staged and you like yelling at people that already knew, like it was still funny.
It was entertaining.
It was entertaining
because like half the time, I mean, I might have just missed it, but half the time I didn't even realize it was staged. I was just like, what is Ian doing?
Yeah, I also
then I would be like, oh, that was on purpose. Okay.
Like I said, also, like, I kind of thought I was not long for this world most of the game. I always thought that I was just going to get voted off relatively soon. And I wanted to leave my mark on, I wanted to be remembered as like a memorable character at the very least.
No, you did a good job of that. You definitely had a really fun arc on the season. And it was super fun to watch you.
Yeah.
From a TV standpoint, it's a great season. Obviously, like all the people with giant egos get taken down. You have this very lovable, likable winner. It's a great season for TV. Yeah, I think it's the villains. I actually think that they could have made me more villainous. That like you want me to lose even more, But it was weird watching it after editing all the seasons because I was watching it back. I was like, oh, so now this is how everybody else has felt all along. Like when theirs has come out and they've had to relive this trauma. This is how it's felt for everybody else. But yeah, again, also like I was saying, I was annoyed specifically with George and Noah right after the game ended, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a game, as they say. And again, once you've edited everything and you more and more you understand everyone has their own point of view on things in Survivor, there's 20 different points of view. Everybody has their own view, and the view of the game that each person has is accurate to themselves, So like those guys, they voted for who they thought deserved to win. That's what they thought, for whatever reason. And everybody in the jury did. Whether or not I agree with it, don't like it, I think that's why it's a bad game. But if we can't agree at the end of a football game, whoever has more points wins. At the end of Survivor, we have no idea. There's a billion different things about it. And so I'm like, that to me is a good TV show. It's a good social experiment.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing to watch. It's not something that I myself want to participate in again.
Real
valid.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for doing this, though. It was fun to come back into it, rant a little bit, complain,
No, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. I'm sure the fans will enjoy hearing all of this.
I'm sure some will. Some will be like, "Oh, this scumbag."
Some will be like, "Oh, this kid again. What are we gonna do?"
Not this guy again. I hope we never see this guy again. But Roger, are you graduating this spring?
No, I'm a junior, so I have 1 month.
Really?
Yeah.
How are you
Why does
only a
everybody
junior?
think that?
I feel like you've been around forever.
I mean, I've been around for a while, but like I've been around since I was a freshman, so like
So did you play your first semester then?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Good for you.
Yep.
That's wild. There's not that many people who've done that, I feel like.
Nope.
That's nuts. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait for you guys' seasons to come out.
I'm pretty excited.
for this.
I'm excited. They're some good seasons.
Well, viewers at home, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will see you in the next episode. And remember to keep your torch lit.
Keep your torch lit.